Chapter 1393. Not only was there a lot of information in Tang Zheng's brain, but the star power in the martial artist's meridians was also transmitted into his body through the palm of his hand. The soul-searching technique scoured the martial artist's brain for information, while the sky-swallowing technique absorbed the martial artist's power. This group of martial artists was completely different from other martial artists. Ordinary martial artists had inner strength in their bodies, but this group of martial artists had the original star power in their bodies, which had not been transformed into inner strength at all. This was equivalent to a new cultivation method, which opened Tang Zheng's eyes. While he was shocked, he also felt like he had obtained a treasure. He lacked the star power the most. Since that was the case, he naturally could not waste it. Thus, he looked at the other martial artists with a thought-provoking gaze, like a hungry beast seeing a sumptuous meal. At the same time, the information he searched made his heart sink. This group of martial artists was indeed Ji Wuxiang's men. Ji Wuxiang had already broken through the threshold set by the Emperor of Heaven and soared into the sky. What realm had Ji Wuxiang's cultivation reached? They had no way to tell. However, one thing was certain. Ji Wuxiang could transform martial artists and use the star power to increase their cultivation in a short period of time. In addition, the star power's attribute was higher than the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, so even cultivators could not see through a martial artist's cultivation. This group of martial artists was originally the best of the best. After being transformed by Ji Wuxiang, their strength had increased to another level. They had actually soared to the martial king realm, and one of them had even reached the martial emperor realm. What kind of concept was this? In the past, martial artists who had reached the Grandmaster realm were very rare. They were considered true experts. But now, the Grandmaster realm was not even enough to be looked at. They could only be considered small fries. It was no wonder that this group of martial artists was so arrogant. If they suddenly became so powerful, no matter who it was, they would become arrogant. Tang Zheng felt the pressure suddenly increase. The martial artists had become so powerful. It was another rising force that was definitely not inferior to Qiyu. This was a situation that no one had expected. Ji Wuxiang is really a genius. Tang Zheng couldn't help but sigh. All of this was the result of Ji Wuxiang's efforts. If it had been anyone else, even if they had the right time, they definitely wouldn't have been able to achieve this. Although they were enemies, Tang Zheng couldn't help but respect them. Of course, he was not afraid. Ji Wuxiang is definitely at the martial emperor realm. This means that he is no weaker than a Mahayana realm cultivator. I wonder how Qiyu will feel after hearing this news. Qiyu was ambitious and wholeheartedly wanted to unify the world. If he knew that there was a strong enemy like Ji Wuxiang, he would definitely not sit still and wait for death. His heart skipped a beat, and he was even more certain that he couldn't make it public. While everyone thought that he was dead, he would let them fight to the death. In addition, this group of martial artists could actually activate the heavenly chess to a certain extent. Although it was only a portion of the heavenly chess power, its power was already very impressive. The heavenly chess power was invisible. In fact, even the person being attacked couldn't sense it. Emosia was like this. He only felt that his strength seemed to be reduced, which was why he was in such a sorry state. Emosia thought that it was because of him, but in fact he was unknowingly attacked by the heavenly chess. This was especially frightening. Tang Zheng was shocked. He looked at the sky and the surroundings. At first, even he didn't notice this. After all, he didn't think in this direction. However, at this moment, he calmed down and really felt the heavenly chess power. This power had already become very faintly discernible. If he didn't know the various mysteries of the heavenly chess, he wouldn't be able to sense it at all. For example, even if Emosia told him, he wouldn't be able to sense the heavenly chess power. Tang Zheng sighed inwardly. He looked at Emosia with a bit of pity in his eyes. The great expert of the Yellow Emperor tribe actually ended up in such a sorry state after being besieged by a group of unknown martial artists. Emosia's heart skipped a beat. He felt a little uncomfortable under Tang Zheng's gaze. He was on guard, thinking that Tang Zheng was going to do him harm. He was very clear about the threat and impact his actions had on Tang Zheng. He didn't think that Tang Zheng would let him go. However, the shock in Mo Xie's heart was also indescribable. He was in such a sorry state after being chased by this group of martial artists. However, in front of Tang Zheng, this group of martial artists didn't cause any waves. Especially the power displayed by the black hole. It terrified Mo Xie. He knew that this was the sky-devouring skill. Obviously, the sky-devouring skill's power had increased again. Tang Zheng's cultivation had also improved by leaps and bounds. He wasn't inferior to him. Mo Xie already had the thought of leaving. He would act according to the situation and leave before Tang Zheng finished off this group of martial artists. Otherwise, what awaited him definitely wouldn't be good. Tang Zheng retracted his gaze. He didn't care about Mo Xie's thoughts. Instead, he focused his attention on the martial artists. The martial artists were frightened by his stare. They roared angrily and formed seals with their hands. The power of stars gushed out from their bodies and affected the celestial chess. The power of the celestial chess erupted, attacking Tang Zheng one after another. This attack was formless and invisible, making it hard to guard against. However, Tang Zheng wasn't an ordinary person. With a thought, he quietly took a step forward and dodged the celestial chess attack. Then, as if he was taking a leisurely stroll, he took light and quick steps. Each time, he would take a step before Tianqi could attack, causing all of Tianqi's attacks to miss. The martial artists were shocked. Their eyes widened, staring at him as if they had seen a ghost. How did you do it? Li Xiaotian and Mo Xie's hearts shook. They had a strange feeling. What did the martial artists mean by that? Mo Xie was experienced and knowledgeable after all. Staring at Tang Zheng's feet, he came up with an idea. Could it be that he's avoiding something? But why don't I feel anything strange? He didn't understand the celestial chess, so of course he wouldn't feel anything. Immediately, he felt even more confused. He couldn't see through it at all. This was a huge blow to him. Tang Zheng looked at the martial artist with a smile and said, "You are Ji Wuxiang's people. Didn't he tell you that he's not the only one who understands the mysteries of the celestial chess? You're a cultivator, how could you understand the mysteries of the celestial chess?" The other party still couldn't believe it. Tang Zheng snorted coldly. He thought to himself that if Ji Wuxiang hadn't tricked him, this celestial chess might not have succeeded so quickly. He also played a part in this. Now that he thought about it, he was filled with regret. However, he didn't say this out loud. Seeing that Tang Zheng did not say anything, the martial artist began to feel apprehensive. The celestial chess was their greatest reliance, their magic weapon for victory. It seemed that they had been too blindly optimistic. The power of the celestial chess couldn't threaten Tang Zheng, so how could they be a match for Tang Zheng with their little cultivation? They saw that Tang Zheng was like a wisp of green smoke, rushing into the group of martial artists with a whoosh, as if no one was there to catch him. They all roared angrily, but it was useless. They only saw a figure pass by, and a black light flashed. Then, the star power in their bodies flowed out like a flood, leaving their bodies. Tang Zheng didn't have any intention of letting the tiger go back to the mountain. After the sky-devouring technique absorbed their star power, the black hole flashed, and this group of people disappeared into the black hole, turning into wisps of vitality and appearing in the heaven realm. Mo Xie wanted to wait for an opportunity to escape, but before he could even take that step, he didn't expect Tang Zheng to eliminate the enemy in a flash of lightning. He was immediately stunned on the spot, his face stiff, and he didn't know what to do. Li Xiaotian looked at Tang Zheng in high spirits. This was the man of her dreams. That vigorous and decisive appearance was so handsome, enough to charm thousands of girls and make them burst with joy. She couldn't bear to look away, as if it would be her loss if she didn't look. However, Mo Xie didn't want to look at Tang Zheng at all. He wanted nothing more than for him to ignore him, treat him like air, and ignore him. However, Tang Zheng slowly turned his head and locked his gaze on him. Mo Xie's heart was beating like a drum, but he didn't want to show his fear on the surface. He said, "Tang Zheng, you didn't die, and your power has increased greatly." Tang Zheng sneered. "This is all thanks to you. Do you still want me to thank you?" Mo Xie didn't completely understand the meaning of his words. He waved his hand and said, I can't be bothered to talk nonsense with you. I still have something to do, so I'll leave first. Wait. Tang Zheng moved his feet and blocked his path. You want to leave just like that? We still haven't settled the debt between us. Mo Xie could see the killing intent in Tang Zheng's eyes. His heart trembled as he said, since you want to settle the debt, then I'll settle it with you. You've obstructed my Yellow Emperor tribe's operations time and time again, and you keep saying that you're not in cahoots with Qiyu. Do you think I'll believe you? Mo Xie had escaped too quickly at the peak of Sky Mountain, so he didn't see what Qiyu did to Tang Zheng. Although Tang Zheng and Qiyu were always competing, Mo Xie still had a trace of doubt in his heart. He believed that Tang Zheng and Qiyu were inextricably linked. Whether you believe me or not, that's your own business. The problem between me and Qiyu has nothing to do with you. I just want to settle the debt between us. Tang Zheng didn't comment and said coldly. Mo Xie took a step forward and said in an imposing manner, what do you want? What are you going to do in the 10,000 mountains? Tang Zheng directly asked. This was what he had heard from Mo Xie just now. A question mark appeared in his heart. At this critical moment, Mo Xie definitely wasn't going to the 10,000 mountains to relax, but to have some other secret or unspeakable goal. He naturally wanted to get to the bottom of this. Mo Xie's expression changed slightly as he stared straight at Tang Zheng and said, why do you care what I'm going to do? Tang Zheng wrinkled his eyebrows. If you don't cooperate, then don't blame me for being merciless. While speaking, the black hole appeared in Tang Zheng's palm again. It grew bigger and bigger, as if it was about to swallow Mo Xie. Mo Xie suddenly froze, his heart trembling. He had already seen the power of the swallowing heaven technique, especially when it had swallowed 9 golden crow souls. It was enough to see how terrifying it was. Mo Xie didn't have the confidence to win. He stared fixedly at Tang Zheng for a few seconds. Seeing that he was about to lose his patience, he hurriedly said, do you think I'm afraid of you? I'll openly go to the 10,000 mountains and tell you where it is. He spoke in a dignified manner, but in reality he was really afraid of Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng understood this point, but didn't point it out. He quietly waited for him to continue. Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you've become stronger. Let me tell you, there are more experts in this world than you can imagine. Mo Xie said in a low voice. Oh, then I'd like to hear what other experts there are. Tang Zheng said with interest. Chapter 1394. Tang Zheng's expression remained the same. There was not a trace of surprise on his face. Instead, there was a hint of mockery in his eyes. %22? 22 Moi's eyes widened in suspicion. After a while, he said, %22, why aren't you surprised at all when you hear about the inner demons? 22 Tang Zheng looked at him with a half-smile and asked, %22, why should I be surprised? 22, why should I be surprised? Chapter 1395. You want to see Tian Chanzi? Tang Zheng looked at the stubborn Mo Xie in shock, unable to understand. Mo Xie's expression was firm as he nodded. Yes, I want to see him. The sooner the better. But Tang Zheng asked with a frown. When you see him, everything will naturally come to light. Mo Xie purposely kept them in suspense. Tang Zheng didn't buy it. He simply crossed his arms and said indifferently, if you don't say it, then don't even think about seeing Tian Chanzi. You know very well the relationship between him and me. If I say you can't see him, then you absolutely can't see him. Tang Zheng's unyielding attitude made Mo Xie suddenly startled. His expression froze as he stammered and didn't know what to do. Mo Xie stared straight at Tang Zheng. His eyes wanted to spit fire, but he also felt helpless. Finally, he sighed helplessly and said, okay, then I'll tell you. Actually, this is just a guess of mine. What guess? Master's remnant soul hasn't disappeared. It's just hidden in Tian Chanzi's body. Mo Xie's tone was mixed with excitement. He had originally despaired, but after hearing about the great battle in the deep canyon, his heart immediately lit up with the light of hope. This time it was Tang Zheng and Li Xiaoyan's turn to be shocked. They looked at each other, unable to describe their feelings with words. the Yellow Emperor's remnant soul could actually still be in Tian Chanzi's body? If it wasn't for Mo Xie's reaction that didn't seem to be acting, Tang Zheng would probably scoff and think it was nonsense. But now he definitely didn't think it was nonsense. Mo Xie was so excited, so it was most likely true. Mo Xie looked straight at the two of them, very understanding of their feelings, and said, "Now you should be able to understand my feelings." Actually, Mo Xie didn't want to tell anyone about this at all to avoid new problems, especially since Tang Zheng had repeatedly stopped him from reviving the Yellow Emperor. However, this matter involved Tian Chanzi, and he had no way of bypassing Tang Zheng. Therefore, he had no choice but to tell the truth. If Tang Zheng continued to obstruct him, there was nothing he could do. However, he would definitely fight back and seize this one and only opportunity. At that time, the two of them would definitely fight to the death. He stared at Tang Zheng with burning eyes, waiting for his answer and reaction. Their eyes met. Tang Zheng could truly understand Mo Xie's feelings. He muttered to himself for a moment and said, "I understand. However, even though Tian Chanzi and I have been together almost all the time, I have never found any signs of the Yellow Emperor's remnant soul in his body." Mo Xie faintly smiled and said, "If Master was so easily discovered, then he wouldn't be Master." Tang Zheng rolled his eyes and said, "All right, I'll wait and see." Mo Xie's eyes lit up as he impatiently asked, "You mean you agree?" Tang Zheng calmly asked back, "What reason do I have to refuse? However, I have a question. If you want to use the Yellow Emperor's remnant soul to revive him, won't that cause a calamity in the human world?" Mo Xie shook his head like a rattle drum and said, "How could that be? With Master's remnant soul, why would I need to sacrifice so many innocent lives for something so far away?" Tang Zheng's eyebrows twitched as he coldly snorted and said, "You also know that those are innocent lives. However, in your previous actions, have you ever cared about their lives?" Mo Xie's face alternated between red and white as he guiltily explained, "That was because I was in a hurry to revive Master. Only Master can lead this world to a brighter and more glorious future." A bunch of nonsense. Tang Zheng snorted disdainfully, "This world revolves without anyone. As long as I'm here, I will never agree to sacrifice countless lives to revive one person." These words were resolute and decisive, leaving no room for discussion. Mo Xie understood Tang Zheng's thoughts even more and looked at him with a burning gaze. For a moment, his heart actually wavered a little. Back then, Master was also this determined when he was young. That was why he was able to stand out from countless other tribes and establish great achievements. However, he immediately shook his head and rejected this absurd idea. He thought to himself, how could Tang Zheng be compared to Master? Tang Zheng let out a breath of relief. As long as Mo Xie did not wholeheartedly sacrifice innocent lives to revive the Yellow Emperor, then he would be much more at ease. As for whether or not to stop Mo Xie from reviving the Yellow Emperor, Tang Zheng hesitated for a moment as he could not find an answer for now. Tang Zheng chose to agree because he also wanted to know whether or not the Yellow Emperor's remnant soul was still in Tian Chanzi's body. He had seen the power of this remnant soul. This was related to Tian Chanzi's life and death, so of course he could not ignore it. Only Mo Xie could find out whether or not the Yellow Emperor's remnant soul was still in existence. Both sides reached an agreement, and Tang Zheng brought Mo Xie home. Mo Xie looked at Tang Zheng from time to time and asked about the final situation of the battle at the peak of Sky Mountain. Tang Zheng did not mention that Li Xiaotian did not hesitate to sacrifice his life for him. Not long after, the three of them arrived at a place not far from the villa. The formation had already been activated, blocking their path. Tang Zheng was familiar with the place. He activated the formation and walked in with Mo Xie. Mo Xie looked around and understood, "You've made your home impregnable. It's no wonder that even though news of your death has spread, this place hasn't suffered too many attacks. You've made so many enemies. This result isn't easy to achieve." Tang Zheng also looked around, deliberately avoiding the patrolling witch tribe warriors, and quietly walked to the villa in the middle. Halfway there, he glanced at Mo Xie and said indifferently, "If you want to have any ideas about this place, you have to first see how many lives you have. Otherwise, you won't even know how you died. Tang Zheng's words were not exaggerated. Not only did the house have a formation as the first defense system, but there was also the Empyrean Fairy, an expert, guarding it. It was not a place that ordinary people could invade. The villa area was very quiet. Obviously, during the time he was away, it was quite peaceful here. Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief. The three of them silently appeared outside Tian Chanzi's window. "Who is it?" A low shout came from inside the house, and a sharp aura shot out through the window. Tian Chanzi had discovered their whereabouts. Tang Zheng flew in through the window, and a sharp attack came unexpectedly. He casually reached out and dissolved the attack, saying, "Tian Chanzi, it's me." His voice was not loud, but it was like a clap of thunder, shocking Tian Chanzi and stopping his follow-up attacks. Ding! The lights were on, and there were 3 more people in the room. Tian Chanzi's pupils shrank, and he first found Tang Zheng. He could not hide his surprise and said, "You're back." Although it was not the first time Tang Zheng went to the ghost realm, Tian Chanzi was still very worried. After all, this time was different from before. He was going to bring Li Xiaotian back to life. Tian Chanzi knew that he could never do it. In this world, only Tang Zheng dared to do so. But now Tang Zheng was standing in front of him alive, and Li Xiaotian was standing beside him, which meant that it was a success. Tian Chanzi really wanted to cheer a few times and give Tang Zheng a big hug, but his eyes moved slightly, and his smile immediately froze. It was as if his face suddenly changed. His smile disappeared, and with a schwa, he became incomparably gloomy. He stared straight at Emo Xie, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. His entire body shivered, and he was ready to attack. He cautiously said, "It's you. You actually dare to come here?" Tian Chanzi had fought with Emo Xie several times, and his impression of this face was too deep. He did not expect to see this face in his room. How could he not be surprised? In a flash, many thoughts flashed through his mind. Could it be that Tang Zheng and Li Xiaotian were controlled by Emo Xie and were forced to bring him here? Tian Chanzi was ready to fight at any time, and he stared at Emo Xie like a tiger watching its prey. Emo Xie's expression was excited, as if he had seen a treasure, and he stared at Tian Chanzi, which made Tian Chanzi's heart tremble. "What are you looking at me for?" Tian Chanzi asked, his heart palpitating. Emo Xie stretched out his hand, wanting to grab Tian Chanzi and carefully examine him. Tian Chanzi suddenly stepped back, and with a whoosh, a sword light flashed, and the cold light of the long sword was in front of him, ready to fight. Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily and said, "Tian Chanzi, don't have such a big reaction." Tian Chanzi looked at him and said, "Boy, don't worry, I'm here, and I won't let him do whatever he wants. I will definitely save you." "Save me?" Tang Zheng was stunned for a moment, and pointed at his nose. His eyes rolled, and he suddenly realized that Tian Chanzi had misunderstood. "Tian Chanzi, you don't need to save me, I'm fine. Don't worry, I'm not being threatened by him." Tang Zheng's explanation didn't dispel Tian Chanzi's doubts, and he stared hatefully at Emo Xie, saying, "Did you cast some kind of evil spell on Tang Zheng, so that's why he said those words to numb me?" Seeing that his misunderstanding was getting deeper and deeper, Tang Zheng hurriedly walked over and grabbed his arm. Emo Xie didn't move. Tian Chanzi looked at Tang Zheng's hand in shock, and then looked at the familiar face in front of him, confirming that it was Tang Zheng and not someone else in disguise. "Boy, what the hell are you doing?" Tian Chanzi asked, bewildered. "I'm not doing anything, someone wants to see you, and I just brought him here," Tang Zheng said, pointing at Emo Xie. "He wants to see me?" Tian Chanzi doubtfully confirmed that Tang Zheng wasn't being threatened, but after hearing Tang Zheng's words, he felt that it was inconceivable. "Yes, he wants to see you," Tang Zheng repeated. "What's there to see him for? He's our enemy, and you brought him here, aren't you afraid of danger?" Tian Chanzi asked in a bad mood. He had a deep understanding of Emo Xie's power, which was why he was so afraid of Emo Xie. Emo Xie didn't get angry, and only said awkwardly, "It's true that I want to see you, but I have something very important to confirm with you." "I have nothing to talk about with you," Tian Chanzi said bluntly, and secretly winked at Tang Zheng, as if to say that they should solve this problem together. Tang Jing looked at him with a smile that wasn't a smile, and said, Tian Chanzi, don't worry, he really has something to talk to you about. Seeing that Tang Jing didn't take the bait, Tian Chanzi was helpless, and complained about him in his heart, saying, what business could there be between him and me? Mo Xie stared at Tian Chanzi, but couldn't see anything for a while, so he simply said, I want to confirm whether or not Master's remnant soul is still in your body. Chapter 1396. Tian Chanzi obviously knew who Mo Xie's master was. It was the Yellow Emperor. The Emperor's remnant soul had left a deep impression on him. It was the first time in his life that he had lost control of his body. It was more frightening than the fear of death. Fortunately, he used his perseverance to take back the initiative. The Yellow Emperor's remnant soul had disappeared without a trace, as if it had disappeared from the world. His face was ashen as he bitterly glared at Mo Xie and said, you're really daydreaming. You still want to find that remnant soul in my body. Mo Xie didn't have much of a reaction as he stubbornly said, Master's remnant soul appeared in your body before, so of course I have reason to believe that it is still in your body. Nonsense. If it was in my body, then would I still be standing here alive? Humph, haven't I already been controlled by him? Tian Chanzi unhappily retorted. Mo Xie calmly said, Master's remnant soul has been here for so many years and is already very weak. You are also not an ordinary person, so of course he can't always control you. That's why he is still in your body. You make it sound so amazing. It's like you really saw it with your own eyes. Tian Chanzi curled his lips and said disdainfully. Mo Xie said, although I didn't see it with my own eyes, I believe in Master. His remnant soul won't scatter so easily. Seeing him speak with such certainty, not only did Tang Zheng and Li Xiaotian somewhat believe him, but even Tian Chanzi couldn't help but feel his heart beat like a drum. Could it be that the remnant soul is still in my body? He hurriedly circulated his energy and checked his body. As usual, he didn't find anything out of the ordinary. Immediately, he hurriedly suppressed his doubts and firmly said, this is my own body, so I have the most right to speak. How is it your turn to tell me what to do? Mo Xie didn't give up and said, I only need to check it once. In your dreams? Tian Chanzi turned his head. There was no room for discussion. Mo Xie's face froze. His heart felt like it was on a roller coaster, falling from the peak to the bottom. But he still didn't give up. He turned his head to look at Tang Zheng, as if he wanted him to persuade him. Tang Zheng's head moved. He was not in a hurry to convince Tian Chanzi. Instead, he said, Mo Xie, this matter can't be rushed. As the saying goes, the road to happiness is strewn with setbacks. Mo Xie opened her mouth as if she wanted to refute, but swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. She bitterly nodded, her expression lonely. I'll stay. One day, I'll get to the bottom of this. Mo Xie said unwillingly. Tian Chanzi snorted and didn't even look at him. The two of them were clearly competing. Tang Zheng looked on coldly. His heart moved. Leaving Mo Xie here was not a good thing. After all, this was his base camp. There were too many people he cared about. If he left Mo Xie alone, what if he hurt them? Therefore, Mo Xie absolutely could not be given too much freedom. Mo Xie, didn't you want to know if the remnant soul is still there? Then you can only wait. During this time, for the sake of safety, I have to find another place for you. Mo Xie raised an eyebrow and asked, where? Sumi Tian. Tang Zheng raised his hand. You have to stay in my Sumi Tian for a period of time. Of course, if you don't agree, then it's a different matter. Mo Xie's expression changed uncertainly. He stared at Tang Zheng's hand. He knew very well that this was a risky move. Once he entered Sumi Tian, he would be in an absolutely passive situation. In the future, would he be able to break through the restrictions of Sumi Tian? What if Tang Zheng imprisoned him for life? After all, Tang Zheng was the master of Sumi Tian. But if he didn't agree, then he would never be able to find out if the remnant soul was still there. I'm all alone anyway. This is my only chance to turn defeat into victory. If I give up because I'm afraid, then I'll never be able to resurrect Master. His mind was full of thoughts as he pondered. Tang Zheng must be like me. He also wants to find out if the remnant soul is still there. This concerns Tian Chanzi's safety. He definitely won't dare to take it lightly. So, he will definitely let it go. Once there was a chance to leave Sumi Tian, then he wouldn't be imprisoned in Sumi Tian forever. As long as there was a chance to see the light of day again, he was confident that he could turn danger into safety. Okay, I promise you. After a while, he nodded heavily and agreed. Tian Chanzi was stunned for a moment. He looked at Mo Xie as if he was looking at a fool. He actually agreed to this condition. This risk was too big. Tang Zheng wasn't surprised because he knew what the Yellow Emperor's remnant soul meant to Mo Xie. He had to give it his all. As for Sumi Tian, he wasn't worried about Mo Xie running amok there, because there was still a Master Shura in Sumi Tian. During the trip to the world of spirits and souls, Shura was taken in by Dizong of Goguryeo. However, when Tang Zheng left the world of spirits and souls, Dizong of Goguryeo returned Shura to him. Dizong of Goguryeo found a lot of marks of Tang Zheng on Shura's body. This was because he recited the Ksitigarbha Sutra every day and left the marks on Shura's body. As the parties involved, Shura and Tang Zheng didn't notice this. However, the powerful Dizong of Goguryeo did. Suddenly, he understood one thing. Shura and Tang Zheng already had some kind of mysterious connection. Rashly taking Shura away from Tang Zheng might not be a good thing. Moreover, Tang Zheng actually gave Shura wisdom. This was something that Dizong of Goguryeo didn't expect, and it made him very happy. He understood the value of variables and hoped that Tang Zheng could create more miracles. After Shura experienced the war in the world of spirits and souls, he seemed to be in awe of Tang Zheng. Since returning from the world of spirits and souls, he quietly stayed in Sumi Tian. With Shura monitoring Mo Xie, Tang Zheng wasn't worried that he would cause any trouble. Tang Zheng stretched out his hand and Sumi Tian on his wrist lit up. He said, "Then come in." Mo Xie gave up resisting and calmed down. With a flash of light, he disappeared and appeared in Sumi Tian. Mo Xie and Tang Zheng's skills were similar. If Mo Xie didn't give up resisting, Tang Zheng wouldn't be able to take him in even with Sumi Tian. Mo Xie blinked and found himself in Sumi Tian. Shura was standing in front of him. He deeply sized up the Azura and understood Tang Zheng's intentions. Looking at the Azura's covetous eyes, he chose to wait and see. He believed that Tang Zheng would definitely let him out. Tian Chanzi looked like he had seen a ghost. He looked at this scene in disbelief and said, "You brat, you actually made him willingly go to Sumi Tian. TSK, amazing." As he said this, he gave a thumbs up. It was harder to make an expert like Mo Xie yield than to kill him, but Tang Zheng did it just like that. It was really amazing. Tang Zheng looked at Tian Chanzi with a smile and said, "Isn't this all thanks to you?" If he didn't want to know if you have the Yellow Emperor's remnant soul in your body, he wouldn't have agreed to my condition. Tian Chanzi snorted and rolled his eyes, saying, "I just said that there's no such thing as a remnant soul in my body. How could my body not know? I know better than anyone else. How could I let him check my body with just a few words?" Tang Zheng knew of Heaven Monk's violent temper, so he followed along and said, "Your words are indeed reasonable. How can we be led by the nose by him?" Since Mo Xie was already in Sumi Tian, Tang Zheng wasn't in a hurry to let him out. If he didn't take this opportunity to torture him, he wouldn't be able to vent the anger in his heart. Therefore, he wasn't in a hurry to persuade Tian Chanzi. He understood Tian Chanzi and knew that there was a trace of doubt in his heart. If it were anyone else, their heart would be in a mess upon hearing this news. In the end, everyone wanted to know the answer. Tian Chanzi was no exception. Tang Zheng didn't persuade him, nor did he force him. He waited for Tian Chanzi to take the initiative to speak. Tian Chanzi was still panting with anger, saying, "Kid, you're getting more and more reckless. You even dare to bring back anyone. That's a Mo Xie, not a cat or dog." Tang Zheng modestly nodded and said, "Yes, what you said. If there's such a thing in the future, I'll definitely deal with the other party first." Tian Chanzi was stunned and said resentfully, "It's not like that. I just think that your actions are too risky. This is a critical time, not a normal time." "You just came back, So you don't know that the situation in the human world has changed greatly, right? Tang Jing raised his eyebrows and asked curiously, what changes? Speaking of which, you won't believe it even if you beat me to death. Tian Chanzi laughed, deliberately keeping him in suspense. Tang Jing didn't rush him. Seeing that he was done with showing off, he finally said, martial artists have already walked down the stage of history. The government has already announced the existence of cultivators. Instead, the status of cultivators is highly respected. The government announced the existence of cultivators and highly respected? Tang Zheng was really shocked. In any case, he didn't expect this result. Why would the government do this? What good would it do him? A lot of questions appeared in Tang Zheng's head. Tian Chanzi was very satisfied with Tang Zheng and Li Xiaotian's reactions. He looked at the two of them proudly and said, you definitely can't guess who is the person who is pushing for this. You know this person and you have a lot of conflicts. Tang Zheng furrowed his eyebrows as several figures flashed through his mind. In the end, it settled on one person. Could it be the chief? Tian Chanzi clapped his hands and praised, you brat, your brain is really sharp. You actually guessed it right. After a pause, Tian Chanzi laughed and said, are you very surprised and taken aback? Not only you, but everyone who knows the inside story is very surprised. He actually pushed for this matter, Tiskti. Tang Jing said, there must be a reason for this. Every move of these people has a deep meaning. It's definitely not a spur-of-the-moment action. But what good would it do him? Tang Zheng couldn't think of it. He was eager to ask the chief face-to-face. However, he calmed down immediately. The situation had changed so much, there must be a lot of twists and turns. Chapter 1397. Tang Zheng was really stunned by this bombshell. The cultivators actually started to chase after the martial artists. Wasn't this the same as how Nuera dealt with the cultivators back then? No, this was probably the revenge of the cultivators for the enmity of the past. Although it had been hundreds of years, most of the cultivators had not forgotten that shameful thing. The high and mighty cultivators had actually been expelled from this world by the martial artists. This was a great humiliation. No matter what, they would never forget it. Who is behind all this? Tang Jing asked in a deep voice. There were many martial artists around him. Not to mention the big families, there were also those who followed him in the ordinary balance. Most of them were also martial artists. They were also targets to be hunted down. How could he sit back and do nothing? I knew you would ask this. Tian Chanzi said proudly, I sent people to investigate a long time ago. There are already results. Who is the mastermind behind this? Tang Zheng couldn't wait to ask. Tian Chanzi said slowly, actually, you can definitely guess it even if I don't say it. Yes, it's Chiyu. Other than him, who else would do such a thing? Although he was not expelled back then, the Devil Clan was expelled after all, and he had many of the people involved back then. Now that they have defeated the Yellow Emperor's old subordinates, they will naturally look for the martial artists to settle this score. Tang Jing did not say a word. It could be said that he agreed with Tian Chanzi's words. This was also something that Chiyu would do. How many martial artists have died? Not too many. After all, there are too many ordinary people. Although it is easier than finding a needle in a haystack, it is impossible to find every martial artist accurately. Tian Chanzi said, what about the martial artists related to us? They have not been affected yet, but I believe it will be soon, especially the Yen family. A tall tree attracts the wind. Chiyu will definitely not let them go. Tian Chanzi said worriedly. Chiyu is determined to do this, who can resist? However, I've heard of a rumor in the pugilistic world recently that there seems to be a mysterious organization roping in martial artists to become their safe haven. This organization was rumored to be miraculous. It was said that they could fight against Chiyu. Many martial artists heard this and went to seek refuge with this mysterious organization. Tian Chanzi frowned and said in surprise. Obviously, Tian Chanzi had not received the latest news about this mysterious organization that had suddenly appeared. Tang Jing felt a chill run down his spine. He suddenly had an idea and said, this organization is actually not that mysterious. You won't be surprised if I tell you. Tian Chanzi's eyes widened in curiosity. Azure Dragon Palace. Tang Zheng blurted out, this must be Ji Wuxiang's plan. Besides him, who else would have such a big mouth? How could it be him? Wasn't his mind disturbed by the Emperor of Heaven's words? Tian Chanzi said inexplicably. Tang Zheng smiled faintly and told Tian Chanzi about the martial artists joining forces to kill Mo Xie. Tian Chanzi's expression immediately became very interesting. Not even in his dreams did he think that a martial artist could become so powerful. Even Mo Xie wasn't a match for him, let alone him. Immediately, his confidence suffered a serious blow, and he smiled bitterly with a pale face. The world changes with each passing day, constantly changing. Not only do you make me feel ashamed, even other cultivators have caught up with me. Alas, life is unpredictable. Tang Zheng was not surprised by Tian Chanzi's sigh. He said, this is all because of the heavenly chess. Only by destroying the heavenly chess can we destroy Ji Wuxiang's plan. You also said how powerful the heavenly chess is. How could it be so easy to destroy? Moreover, martial artists have the power of the stars. This is a higher level of energy than the world's spirit energy. This indicates that martial artists have already taken the initiative. Tian Chanzi chattered on. Suddenly he paused and said thoughtfully, in this world the Azure Dragon Hall is not the only martial artist. Don't we also have martial artists? Then can we also let them use the power of the stars? Tang Zheng rubbed his temples. After thinking for a while, he said non-committally, I'm afraid it can't be done for the time being. Ji Wuxiang must have grasped a mysterious method to allow martial artists to do this. Heaven Monk let out a long sigh and said, then this is going to be difficult. How could Tang Zheng not know this? Since you're back, then everyone has a backbone. Before, I didn't realize your importance. This time you've been gone for so long, and so many things have happened. Everyone is helpless. Your importance is really showing. Tian Chanzi said with a smile that was not a smile. The news of Tang Zheng's death caused a great shock. The situation in the capital had already undergone subtle changes. The Yen family, who was originally at the peak of their power, had become low-key. It seemed that they could dilute their own existence. The capital was no longer a pile of loose sand. The power of the government had risen again. After all, this was the center of power. Once the government exerted its power, without the Yen family's restrictions, the result could be imagined. Tang Zheng smiled faintly. He patted Tian Chanzi's shoulder and said, don't be modest. Your importance is no less than mine. If the family didn't have you, how could I feel at ease going to the ghost realm? By the way, your trip to the ghost realm seems to have been very fruitful. She was successfully resurrected, and your cultivation, I can't see through it anymore. Did it increase again? Tian Chanzi looked at Tang Zheng with interest and said. Tang Zheng smiled, I'm a bit lucky. My cultivation has reached the second grade of the Mahayana stage. What? Tian Chanzi was so shocked that he almost jumped up. He stared at Tang Zheng as if he was looking at a monster. He said suspiciously, second grade of the Mahayana stage, kid, did you ride a rocket? This speed is too fast. It's just lucky, Tang Zheng said modestly. Humph kid, you really have dog shit luck. Others can't reach this realm even if they cultivate for countless years. But you, kid, have only been cultivating for a few years. Sigh, are Skywalkers really so powerful? Tian Chanzi was incomparably envious. Are you jealous? Tang Zheng joked. Tian Chanzi rolled his eyes and said, I'm only jealous, not envious. It's really annoying to compare yourself to others. Tian Chanzi, don't be discouraged. I believe you will also have a day like this. Tang Zheng patted him on the shoulder and comforted him. Of course, who am I, Tian Chanzi? Not to mention the second grade of the Mahayana stage, even the 9th grade of the Mahayana stage is not a problem. Tian Chanzi said heroically, but he seemed to have a guilty conscience. His voice was getting smaller and smaller as he said the last few words. The 9th grade of the Mahayana stage was not so easy. In the thousands of years of Kingsuman's history, only the founder of a free sect had reached the 9th grade of the Mahayana stage. Looking at the entire cultivation world, there were very few masters of the 9th grade of the Mahayana stage. Is there any news about the Empyrean fairy? Tang Zheng's expression became slightly more serious as he asked in a deep voice. This was one of the questions he was most concerned about. In the battle on the peak of Sky Mountain, the Empyrean fairy was kidnapped by Chiyu. In order to force the Emperor of Heaven to appear, the 4 symbols venerables were thrown out and their whereabouts were unknown. Yesterday, I mentioned that the Empyrean fairy was in charge of the family. It was a slip of the pen, sorry. At that time, before he went to the ghost realm, he had told Tian Chanzi to find a way to find out the whereabouts of these two. Tian Chanzi's face was full of guilt as he said resentfully, "I'm really useless. I still don't have any news about her." Tang Zheng sighed inwardly and waved his hand, saying, "It's not your fault. The Empyrean fairy is definitely with Chiyu. Chiyu's strength is high, so how could an ordinary person find him?" Even though he said this, Tian Chanzi still couldn't help but feel guilty. He said, "I will continue to send people to find her whereabouts." Li Xiaotian's eyes flickered as he said, "I'm back. I will mobilize the resources of the Li Palace and see if there are any clues." Tian Chanzi said happily, "Yes, while you were gone, I came into contact with a portion of the Li Palace's affairs. There are so many things to take care of that my head hurts. I really don't know how you managed it in the past. Now that you're back, there will definitely be news soon." Li Xiaoan smiled faintly and said, "Senior is too kind. Although there is no news of the Empyrean fairy's whereabouts, there is news of the 4 symbols venerable. I'm just about to go verify it." Tian Chanzi changed the topic. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up as he asked, "Where is the 4 symbols venerable?" 1,000 li away from Mount Tian. Tang Zheng nodded inwardly. The 4 symbols venerable had been sent flying by Chiyu and was actually 1,000 li away. From this, one could see the power of this attack. He also didn't know if the 4 symbols venerable had been injured. But since he knew the specific location, there was no reason not to look for them. Moreover, there was no time to lose and he had to set out immediately. Tian Chanzi saw through Tang Zheng's thoughts and said, "Are you going to look for the 4 symbols venerable?" Tang Zheng nodded. "Yes, the current situation is confusing and becoming more and more dangerous. I must find the 4 symbols venerable as soon as possible." "That's fine. However, while you were gone, everyone was very worried about your safety. Don't you want to meet with them first?" Tian Chanzi asked for his opinion. Tang Zheng thought for a while and said, "No need. I'll meet with everyone after I bring the 4 symbols venerable back. You can tell them first, but remember not to reveal that I'm still alive to the outside world. I don't want us to attract the attention of everyone at this time." Tian Chanzi nodded thoughtfully, understanding Tang Zheng's good intentions. Nowadays, there was no faction that was easy to deal with. They were far more terrifying than the factions of the past. If they attracted the attention of everyone and became the focal point, they would definitely become the center of attention. Keeping a low profile and letting others fight to the death was the right way to go. Chiyu isn't an idiot. He'll definitely hear about the rise of the martial artists under Ji Wuxiang and definitely won't let them go. "So let's wait and see first," Tang Zheng warned. Tian Chanzi chuckled and gave him a thumbs up. "You're still the smart one. I'm going back to the Li Palace." Li Xiaotian suddenly said, "Don't worry, I won't leak the news. I'll definitely think of a way to find out about the Empyrean fairy's whereabouts." Tang Zheng looked deeply at her and held her hand. He said gently, "Then you must be careful. Don't try to be brave." Li Xiaotian smiled tenderly and said, "Don't worry, I can't bear to leave you again." Tian Chanzi looked at the two in surprise and thought to himself, "This kid is really enlightened. He's won another heart." Chapter 1398. According to the location provided by Tian Chanzi, it was only a little more than 10 kilometers away. This distance was a piece of cake for him. He cast an illusion to hide his figure. Like a gust of wind, he crossed rivers and mountains and went straight to his destination. Unless it was a top expert, ordinary Xiuzhe wanting to discover his whereabouts was tantamount to a fantasy story. Chapter 1399. Deity. A cry of alarm rang out. Then, as if the crowd had come to life, they started to shout loudly and kowtow to Tang Jing, kowtowing nonstop. The several mountain deity descendants were so scared that their souls were about to melt. They were dumbstruck like wooden chickens. Chapter 1400. The Four Symbols Supremes spoke tirelessly about his origins and even the origin of this world. Tang Zheng's thoughts swayed. He had created mountains and rivers in the heaven realm, which was equivalent to creating a world. It was similar to the creation of heaven and earth described by the Four Symbols Supremes. If he was the creator of the heaven realm, then who was the creator of this world? The Four Symbols Supremes could not say who the creator was, but there was definitely such a person. Otherwise, it was impossible to create heaven and earth, and it was impossible to polish a rock into the Four Symbols Supremes. Tang Zheng subconsciously raised his head. The blue sky stretched as far as the eye could see. Could there be a creator above the 9 heavens? Tang Zheng shook his head and abandoned this unrealistic thought. It was confirmed that there was a creator in this world, but whether or not the creator was still around was still unknown. The tribe that brought me back was the shaman tribe. I became the shaman tribe's guardian. Later on, the shaman tribe gradually developed and became the 9 Li tribe. After the Battle of Zhuolu, I was sealed in the 100,000 mountains with the shaman tribe. The Four Symbols Venerable gave a simple explanation of his origins and experiences. Tang Zheng understood everything clearly and couldn't help but sigh with emotion. No one would have thought that the Four Symbols Venerable would actually have such a mysterious origin that involved the origin of this world. Then how did you find yourself? Weren't you injured by Qiyu? Tang Zheng asked curiously. During my battle with Qiyu, I was injured and was sent flying. Then I landed on this mountain. My consciousness was on the verge of disappearing, but at the last moment, the seal in my body was completely removed, giving me a new life. I became one with the mountain and absorbed the energy in the mountain range to recover bit by bit. Tang Zheng was in high spirits. So that was how it was. Qiyu wanted to kill the Four Symbols Supremes, but he had a powerful background after all. Before his death, he triggered his seal. After the seal disappeared, his life could be considered to have been saved. He found his true self and became one with the heaven and earth mountain range. He absorbed the mountain range's energy for his own use and silently healed his injuries. Tang Zheng's arrival was a trigger mechanism that allowed him to completely come to life and transform into his current appearance. Can you become smaller? Tang Zheng looked up at him and asked. Of course. The Four Symbols Venerables became shorter bit by bit. Mounds of dirt rose up from the ground one after another, and then they became undulating mountains. Other than the fact that the mountains were bare and there was no vegetation, there was no other difference. The Four Symbols Venerable rapidly shrank, and before long, he returned to his original size. However, he didn't stop there. In the end, he became the size of an ordinary person. Tang Zheng looked at this scene in surprise. He was really surprised and happy. However, the pleasant surprise did not end there. The Four Symbols warrior's body flashed with light, and he turned into a human. This, even though Tang Zheng was experienced and knowledgeable, he did not expect this to happen. The Four Symbols Venerable had turned into a person, a handsome young man. Master, if I become like this, it'll be more convenient for me to stay by your side. The Four Symbols Venerable smiled brightly. Tang Zheng was slightly startled, and gradually understood. Your true body is a spirit stone, just like Linga. Once your cultivation reaches a certain level, you can transform into a human, right? The Four Symbols Venerable smiled and nodded. Master is right. Everything had a spirit, even a stone. Of course, ordinary stones could not transform into humans even after millions of years, but the Four Symbols Venerable was a spirit stone to begin with. That was why he could transform into a human. After thinking this through, it was naturally not difficult to understand this scene. He stared at the Four Symbols Venerable with a burning gaze. From now on, The four symbols venerable did not need to stay in Sumeru world. He could properly roam the mortal world. This was probably an experience he had never had before. From now on, you'll stay by my side, Tang Zheng instructed. It's not good to call you the four symbols venerable in front of too many people. How about I call you four symbols? Four symbols? He tilted his head and thought for a while, then nodded happily. That's a nice name. From now on, I'll be called Four Symbols. His smile was bright, clean, and pure. He really looked like a young man. Tang Jing stared at him without blinking. He was infected by his smile, and his mood improved for no reason. The Four Symbols Venerable was the same as Ling. They were both spirits that had transformed into humans, and their minds were pure. Even though the Four Symbols Venerable had experienced so many things in the shaman tribe, his temperament was still the same. For Symbols, I'll give you a mission. You have to try your best to remember who the person who polished you was when the world was created, and what characteristics he had. Do you understand? Tang Zheng still wanted to understand the matter of the creation of the world, so he solemnly instructed. The Four Symbols Venerable nodded without hesitation. Yes, Master. I'll do my best to remember. Then let's go home. Tang Jing glanced at the crowd lying on the ground in the distance, not daring to move. He guessed that such a big commotion would probably attract the attention of people with ulterior motives. Qi Yu's forces were growing stronger day by day, so he would definitely investigate the big movements in various places. Such a commotion was indeed very shocking. The Four Symbols Venerable naturally had no objections. He stepped on the somersault cloud with Tang Zheng and disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. The crowd lay on the ground, not daring to get up for a long time. They did not even dare to raise their heads to look, as if they were deeply afraid that the immortal would be angry. After a long time, they did not hear any movement. Only then did they raise their heads, but there was no trace of the immortal in the sky. They felt lost. They had seen the immortal, but they did not make a wish to him. This was a great loss. They scattered in all directions, sighing as they prepared to leave. However, they hadn't gone far when a few more people flew over from the sky. Immediately, there were people who bowed their heads. However, a black light flowed under their feet, revealing an evil aura. They were Qi Yu's subordinates, the Jiuli tribe. The name of the Devil tribe no longer existed. The Devil tribe had been completely transformed into the Jiuli tribe by Qi Yu. The Jiuli tribe looked at the bare mountain range below and were all shocked. They did not see that scene, but from the scene, they could feel the shock. However, their role was to investigate what exactly happened. Naturally, they could not just take a look and return home. They landed one after another and asked in front of the crowd. There was no need to threaten or bribe them. Some people spilled beans from a bamboo tube and described it in a lively manner. After listening, they all revealed shocked and puzzled expressions. They had never heard or seen these people's descriptions. They could not help but doubt the authenticity of these people's descriptions. Did you lie and deceive us? A Jiuli tribe member asked fiercely. We wouldn't dare, we wouldn't dare. The ordinary people hurriedly waved their hands. The others also nodded. You are immortals from the heavens. How dare we deceive you? Obviously, the ignorant people thought that these Jiuli tribe members were immortals. When the Jiuli tribe heard this, they all laughed disdainfully. Immortals, how ridiculous. The laughter stopped abruptly. The Jiuli tribe members exchanged glances and nodded secretly. This news was very important. In order to prevent the news from leaking, these witnesses could not be left alive. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Rays of light shot out from their treasures. Blood splattered. In less than a minute, everyone's life came to an end. Chapter 1401. Qi Yu listened to the report and revealed a shocked expression. He angrily asked, a mountain turned into a giant and can merge with other mountains? In the end, this giant turned into a living person? Yes, this is what those people saw with their own eyes. We have compared their testimonies and there is no mistake. The 9 Li tribesmen respectfully said. Qi Yu deeply frowned. This was something he had never heard of or seen before. He knew that monster beasts could transform into people, But how could a mountain turn into a person? Could a mountain also become a spirit? Inexplicable. But these people swore solemnly and were definitely not lying. The only explanation was that this matter had an unknown mystery. Only by knowing the situation more clearly could they know the inside story. Only, if the 9 Li tribesmen did not see it with their own eyes, there was no way to know who those 2 people were. Especially the person at the beginning, he was the most important person. Troubled times, there are more and more strange things happening in this world. Chiyu pondered for a long time inside. His eyes flashed and he sternly ordered, "All of you listen to my orders. We must find clues to these 2 people as soon as possible. In addition, there is a more important matter that is our top priority." What is it? The people we sent to hunt down the cultivators encountered resistance from mysterious people. This group of people are also cultivators, but their strength is different from ordinary cultivators. They can actually injure our tribesmen and cause one of our teams to be completely annihilated. Chiyu's voice was like a large bell, his tone difficult to conceal his anger. What? Cultivators can actually injure our tribesmen? Everyone was shocked. This group of people was originally from the demon race and their strength was not low. Ever since they became the 9 Li tribesmen, their strength increased day by day. If they were completely annihilated like this, then how powerful were these cultivators? Everyone thought of this and the shock in their hearts could be imagined. Chiyu coldly snorted and said, "It is precisely because of this that we should investigate clearly who this mysterious group of cultivators is." Pausing for a moment, Chiyu's killing intent soared and he murderously said, "No matter who they are, they must be eliminated." "Yes, we must get rid of them." Everyone agreed and left to carry out the order. Chiyu was the only one left in the large hall. With a thought, the wall behind him slowly turned into a door. He walked in step by step. The lanterns were brightly lit, illuminating his gloomy face. "Empyrean Fairy, your father, the Emperor of Heaven, still hasn't come to save you. It seems like your father-daughter relationship isn't that deep. You can actually watch your daughter be trapped and turn a blind eye," Chiyu said meaningfully. As soon as he finished speaking, a ball of flame lit up in the darkness in a corner, illuminating a person's figure. The Empyrean Fairy stood there with her long hair fluttering in the wind. She looked rather haggard. They had suffered heavy losses in the Battle of Sky Mountain. Not only had she been captured alive, but according to Chiyu, Tang Zheng was already dead. This was what shocked her the most. Although she still had a trace of luck in her heart, after careful analysis, this trace of luck seemed to become more and more remote. She was very clear about the consequences of detonating pure yang energy because she had the 9 insane body. She had experienced the pain and even the danger of detonating pure yin energy. If I hadn't hesitated and had sex with him, using my pure yin energy to balance his pure yang energy, he might have been able to escape danger. She couldn't help but regret. This feeling grew with each passing day. If she was given another chance, she would definitely have made a different choice. Hearing this, the Empyrean Fairy raised her head and looked straight at Chiyu. She said, "Chiyu, my father won't fall for your trick. Father and daughter are connected by heart. I believe that one day he will come to save you. I'm very patient," Chiyu said with a smile. The Empyrean Fairy snorted coldly and didn't say anything else. Chiyu didn't mind and continued, "When the time comes and I subdue the Emperor of Heaven, I'll have another general and the world will be in my hands even faster." Chiyu clenched his fists as if victory was within his grasp. "Don't daydream. You want to become the ruler of this world. Have you asked everyone? You don't have the slightest bit of benevolence. No wonder you lost to the Yellow Emperor in the Battle of Zhuol." This was the pain in Chiyu's heart. These words fiercely stabbed Chiyu. His eyes were cold as he said, "Benevolence? What's the use of that? The Yellow Emperor is benevolent? I don't think so. Moreover, the soul of the Golden Crow no longer exists. He has no chance of resurrecting. So what if he won the Battle of Zhuolu? The one who laughs last is the true winner." Now, the only one left in the Yellow Emperor tribe is Xie. She can't make any waves. The glory of the Yellow Emperor tribe is gone forever. The Empyrean Fairy snorted and retorted, How long do you think you can be so glorious? Don't be too happy. Who knows, you might end up in an even worse state. Ha, I'll end up in an even worse state? Chi Yu laughed maniacally. Your words are too childish. After a slight pause, Chi Yu said firmly, just you wait. I'll let you see the day when I unify the world. I'll prove that I'm more suitable for this world than the Yellow Emperor. I'll make this world stronger. Don't forget, there's still the sky beyond heaven. The spatial isolation between this world and the sky beyond heaven is very weak. The demons can return and the people from the sky beyond heaven can come to this world. I'll see how you deal with them when the time comes. The Empyrean fairy raised another thorny issue. Chi Yu's expression stiffened, but immediately returned to normal. He said disdainfully, what's there to fear from the sky beyond heaven? It's good that they're here. I want to settle old scores with them. They've killed many of my clansmen. I'll use their blood as a sacrifice to the souls of my clansmen in heaven. The Empyrean fairy sneered, too lazy to say another word. If the sky beyond heaven were so easy to deal with, the cultivators wouldn't have been so miserable after being banished to the sky beyond heaven. The demons wouldn't have been so impatient to return to this world. In front of the Empyrean fairy, Chi Yu couldn't gain any advantage with words. He flung his sleeves and left without looking back. Southern Yunnan had already become the headquarters of the Azure Dragon Hall. With the Long family as the core, countless martial artists gathered here. The martial artists' strength had greatly increased, and their bodies all possessed the power of the stars. These martial artists were all loyal to Ji Wuxiang. At this moment, Ji Wuxiang frowned, unable to hide his anger. Grandma Li stood at the side, killing intent appearing in her eyes as she said, High Lord, our people have been completely annihilated. This grudge must be avenged. Ji Wuxiang glanced at Grandma Li and said, That's Emosia. Who told them to act on their own accord and actually chase after him. Don't you know how powerful he is? Grandma Li stammered, This is my dereliction of duty. They were patrolling in southern Yunnan when they suddenly encountered Emosia. That's why they decided to chase after him. After all, cultivators are our enemies. Why don't you look at your own strength? Do you really think you're invincible? Ji Wuxiang asked. Grandma Li quickly said, I will definitely give the order. This kind of problem won't happen again in the future. Ji Wuxiang pondered for a moment, then said, Since they've already sacrificed themselves, then I won't pursue the matter. I heard that you even caught Yimeiyu? Yes, I was just about to ask the Venerable One how to deal with her. She's Yi Xuanji's granddaughter. Let him deal with her. Ji Wuxiang thought for a moment, then said, Grandma Li did not raise any objections. Did the Yen family reply? Ji Wuxiang asked again. Grandma Li hesitated for a moment, then nodded and said, He has already replied, but he rejected us. Rejected us? Looks like Yen Padian wants to go all the way and completely annihilate the Yen family. Ji Wuxiang said meaningfully. Ever since Ji Wuxiang completely controlled the heavens chess, he had been recruiting people everywhere, searching for martial warriors experts. Although the power of the stars could increase a martial warrior's power, if this martial warrior was already very powerful, then it would naturally be easier for him to increase his power and reach a higher realm. Most of the martial warriors in the world were in a few great clans. Now, the only great clan left was the Yen family in the capital. Ji Wuxiang started to have ideas about the Yen family, threatening and enticing them, trying to make the Yen family submit to him. This way, he would have more martial warriors and nurture more experts. Ji Wuxiang knew very well that he didn't have much time left. His continuous actions must have attracted Chi Yu's attention. Who is Chi Yu? He would definitely not do things sloppily. Once Chi Yu focused all of his attention on them, a huge battle would definitely break out between the two sides. Right now, it was just a small test of his strength. Once the test was over, a great battle would be unavoidable. Ji Wuxiang had to take advantage of this gap to search for as many martial warriors as possible. The many martial warriors of the Yen family were a part of them. However, for some reason, the Yen family did not submit to him at all. Could it be that the Yin family is still counting on Tang Zheng? He doesn't even have bones left. How can he protect the Yin family? He's daydreaming. Chi Yu muttered to himself, unable to figure it out. Grandma Li had an idea, and said, "Why don't we send people to exterminate the Yin family and kill the chicken to warn the monkey?" Chi Yu immediately waved his hand. "There's no need to go through so much trouble, it's too troublesome. If Yen Patian chooses to perish, I will fulfill his wish." Grandma Li did not say anything else and took her leave. In the cell, Grandma Li saw the haggard but still charming Yi Meiyu, and walked towards her step by step. Yi Meiyu was trapped in the cage, looking at Grandma Li listlessly. Grandma Li stared straight at her, and suddenly shouted, "Get up!" Yi Meiyu stood up as if it was a conditioned reflex. She looked at her suspiciously and said, "You want to kill me? You have repeatedly gone against us. If I don't kill you, what are you doing here?" Grandma Li did not smile and said coldly. Yi Meiyu's face was pale and ashen. She was about to make a name for herself, but she never thought that she would encounter such a mishap. Was he really going to die? She was unwilling and hurriedly said, "Don't kill me, I am Yi Xuanji's granddaughter. What happened in the past was just a misunderstanding. I came here together." Grandma Li had long heard of her ability to take advantage of the situation, so she was not surprised. Her temper was very good, and she sneered, "It's already too late, but I'm not the one who decides your life and death. Someone else will." After Grandma Li finished speaking, Yi Xuanji walked in from the door. Chapter 1403. Yi Meiyu looked at him in shock. After being absent-minded for a few seconds, she shouted as if she had seen her savior, "Grandfather, quickly save me, I am your granddaughter, Meiyu." Grandma Li did not stop her, but said with a cold expression, "Now you know that you are his granddaughter? When you joined forces with the rest of the Ye family to monopolize the Ye family and isolate him, did you ever think that you were his granddaughter?" Yi Meiyu's face froze, knowing that this was her fatal flaw. She had an idea, and said while crying, "That was all because I was controlled by Lu Wuxin. It was not my own intention. I did not want to do that at all." Grandma Li was so smart, how could she be deceived by this 3-year-old child's lie? She said coldly, "Your mind is being controlled? You really dare to say that?" "Really, grandfather, you must believe me. Now that Lu Wuxin is dead, I can't wait to come find you," Yi Meiyu hurriedly said. Grandma Li did not refute her. She only turned to Yi Xuanji and said, "Lord means that you can decide how to deal with her." Yi Xuanji nodded solemnly and said, "Thank you, Lord. I hope you don't disappoint, Lord." After Grandma Li finished speaking, she took a step back and made room for Yi Xuanji. Yi Xuanji and Yi Meiyu were very close to each other. Their eyes met, and Yi Meiyu's eyes were filled with fear and pleading. Suddenly, there was a slight fluctuation in Yi Xuanji's eyes. Yi Meiyu keenly noticed this and was overjoyed. Her face became even more miserable, and her pleading expression became even more sincere. 2 drops of tears flowed out from the corners of her eyes. The fluctuation in Yi Xuanji's eyes became even more intense. Yi Meiyu was secretly delighted, thinking that victory was in her hands. "Yi Meiyu, do you know the harm you have caused to our Ye family?" Yi Xuanji finally spoke. His voice was low and deep, suppressing the anger in his heart. Yi Meiyu hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Grandfather, that was all because I had no choice. I grew up in the Ye family. How could I do anything to harm the Ye family? You taught us to love this family since we were young, and I have always remembered it in my heart." Yi Meiyu cried and sobbed, her voice choked with emotions. Li Xiaotian just kept sneering. She didn't believe this nonsense at all. Yi Xuanji's eyes fiercely twitched a few times, and said in a deep voice, "But your actions are contrary to what I taught you. That was what Lu Wuxin and Mo Xie asked me to do. It really wasn't my intention." Yi Meiyu hurriedly explained. "I just want the Ye family to become stronger and become the leader of the major families. I know that this is also Grandpa's wish and goal. I also want to help Grandpa." Yi Xuanji did not correct the truth in his words, and said, "What about your brother Yi Ku? What did you do to him?" After Yi Xuanji was forced to leave the the Ye family really fell apart. As for Yi Ku's whereabouts, he did not hear any more words. Back then, Yi Ku betrayed Yi Xuanji and threw herself at Yi Meiyu. This matter was a huge blow to Yi Xuanji. After all, he had always had high hopes for Yi Ku. At the last moment, he even gave her the right to decide all the affairs of the family. Yi Ku had basically become his successor. But he never thought that Yi Ku would betray him. He almost couldn't believe all of this, and even his faith in life was about to collapse. The children that he had educated had actually betrayed him and abandoned him. This blow was undoubtedly cruel and serious for an old man. When Yi Meiyu heard the two words Yi Ku, the corner of her mouth twitched twice. Her expression became extremely unnatural, but she quickly covered it up. "Grandpa, Big Brother is staying in a safe place. Now that the situation is complicated, I can't protect him. I can only hide him in a safe place," Yi Meiyu said. "Where is that?" Yi Xuanji was excited. Yi Meiyu didn't even blink and said, "A place. This is a mountain. Without me you can't find them." "In the mountains," Yi Xuanji muttered to himself, his eyes filled with hope. Things had changed and things were no longer the same as before. He desperately wanted to find his grandson and have him join Ji Wuxiang's camp. That way, Yi Ku could become stronger, and he could subtly influence him and beat around the bush. It might not be impossible for him to turn over a new leaf. In this way, the Ye family would once again have a successor and would inevitably rise again. What Yen family? They would be unable to withstand a single blow. The Ye family would have the last laugh, become the final victor, and become a big family that would not fall. Seeing that Yi Xuanji was skeptical, Yi Meiyu quickly promised, "Yes, he is in the mountains. I can go find him. I believe that he also misses Grandpa very much. At that time, our family can be reunited again." Family reunion. Yi Xuanji's expression changed slightly, his eyelids twitched, and he seemed to be quite moved. Yi Meiyu seemed to want to strike while the iron was hot, and really persuade Yi Xuanji, then her life might be saved. But before she could say anything, a light voice rang out, but this voice was no less powerful than a sudden clap of thunder. "Yi Meiyu, your disguise is too good. Even now, you still dare to speak nonsense. Do you really think that no one in this world can see through you?" Li Xiaotian looked straight at her, his eyes full of contempt. A trace of panic appeared in the depths of Yi Meiyu's eyes. She pretended to be calm and said, "Grandma Li, I don't know what you're talking about. Even if I really did something inappropriate, it was still under Lu Wuxin's control, and definitely not out of my own heart." Yi Meiyu seemed to be afraid of something, and deliberately put down these words to clear her name and find a way out. Yi Xuanji seemed to have sensed something, and also looked at Yi Meiyu curiously. Grandma Li directly said, "Oof, Yi Xuanji, your granddaughter is too good at acting. If I didn't know the inside story, I'm afraid I would have been deceived by her." Yi Xuanji asked in a daze, "Grandma Li, what inside story?" Grandma Li looked at Yi Xuanji and couldn't bear it. This news would definitely hurt him and make him suffer. But after hesitating for a moment, she still told the truth. "Your grandson Yi Ku died a long time ago. He died in her hands." Grandma Li pointed at Yi Meiyu and said resolutely, "What?" Both of them exclaimed. Yi Xuanji looked at Yi Meiyu in shock and said with a trembling voice, "You killed your brother?" Yi Meiyu panicked, as if she did not expect that such a deep secret would be made public. She looked at Grandma Li in horror, then looked at Yi Xuanji. She bit her lips and roared crazily, "No, I didn't kill him. She's talking nonsense. He's my brother, how could I kill him?" Yi Xuanji's eyes were bright and full of spirit, as if there was a light shooting out from his pupils that could pierce through everything. He stared at Yi Meiyu without blinking. She couldn't help but feel a little guilty, but she still puffed up her cheeks and stubbornly raised her head. A smile appeared on the corner of Grandma Li's mouth. The bigger Yi Meiyu's reaction, the bigger her smile became, making people feel scared. Yi Meiyu's heart also gradually became scared. There was a voice asking herself, "I'm the only one who knows about this. How did she know? Although your ability to lie is very high, you are still too inexperienced in front of me." Grandma Li shook her head and sighed, Look at me and Yi Xuanji, who are we? We have experienced countless storms and scams. Do you think there are any scams that can deceive us? Yi Meiyu's voice was getting weaker and weaker, and her breathing was involuntarily hurried. Her eyes were flustered, as if she was looking for an opportunity to escape. She knew very well that Yi Ku was Yi Xuanji's flesh and blood. She was the chosen successor of the Ye family, but she died in her hands. Her fate could be imagined. The atmosphere was getting more and more oppressive, making it hard for people to breathe. Yi Xuanji finally opened his mouth and asked with a trembling voice, "You really killed him?" Yi Meiyu wanted to say something but hesitated. Yi Xuanji interrupted her and said, "I'll only give you one chance. Once you miss it, you won't have another chance." "He's not dead." Yi Meiyu hesitated again and again, but insisted. Grandma Li sneered, looking at Yi Meiyu as if she was looking at a dead person. Yi Xuanji shook his head. "Yi Meiyu, you disappoint me too much. Since you were young, I have always followed your temperament and did not interfere with you. I didn't expect you to do such an unforgivable thing as killing your brother. You are really hopeless, and your death is not regrettable." Hearing these words, Yi Meiyu completely panicked. She knew that her lie had been seen through. Moreover, Yi Xuanji's heart was already cold, and he had the intention to kill. She could no longer hide it, and knelt down in front of Yi Xuanji, crying bitterly, "Grandfather, I beg you to spare me. This was not my original intention. I didn't want to kill him. He forced me. I had no choice but to do so." "He forced you?" Yi Xuanji smiled bitterly. "Yes, he always wanted to persuade me to return to the Ye family. In the end, he even threatened me with his life, which was why an accident happened. All of this was an accident. He persuaded you to return to the Ye family and threatened you with his life." Yi Xuanji was shocked, and his expression changed slightly. "Yes." At this point, Yi Meiyu no longer had anything to hide. He left the Ye family and submitted to me. The most important condition was that he could not hurt you. Back then, Lu Wuxin wanted to hurt you, and he had no choice but to do so for your safety. "What?" Yi Xuanji's entire body trembled. This time he was truly shocked. He had always thought that Yi Ku had betrayed him, but it turned out that there was still an inside story. He had no choice but to compromise in order to protect Yi Xuanji. Yi Xuanji did not dare to imagine how much grievance he had endured, but he could not help but think about it. Immediately, his entire body trembled, his heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife, his face was ashen, and he weakly muttered to himself, "My good grandson, you have suffered a great grievance. Grandfather has wronged you. It is grandfather's fault." His voice became hoarse. There were too many people in the Ye family who went against his concept. When Yi Ku betrayed him, he almost collapsed. Because that meant that he had been betrayed, and no matter how much he had achieved in his life, he would be overshadowed by all of this. He thought that he was a complete failure, and that he had no face to face the ancestors of the Ye family. At this moment, although his heart was in pain, he seemed to have come back to life. At least, the biggest stone in his heart had disappeared. Chapter 1404. In the capital, Tang Zheng and the four symbols walked together. They had all used illusions, so even if it was a passerby, it would be extremely difficult to discover their whereabouts. Unless it was someone with an extremely high cultivation. Tang Zheng had already figured out that the reason why his illusions on the mountain peak had failed was because of the influence of the four symbols. Now, although he had the four symbols as his helpers, he did not plan to immediately appear and attract the attention of all parties. The two of them quietly returned to the villa area, only to discover that there were guests at home. Tian Chanzi was receiving them. From afar, looking in through the window, Tang Zheng saw Yen Padian. His expression was stern as he conversed with Tian Chanzi. Tang Zheng did not enter the hall. Instead, he went around to the backyard and left the four symbols behind. He soared into the air and arrived at Marshall's window. He had already discovered that there was no one in Yi Dingdang and Fang Shishi's rooms. They must have gone to school to attend classes, and since there was someone in Marshall's room, he naturally came to see her first. His women must have been worried to death about him. Although Tian Chanzi had already told them that he had returned, he did not see it with his own eyes. In the end, his heart was still not at ease. A gust of wind blew in from the window and lifted the curtains. Wu suddenly opened his eyes and stared straight at the window. She had been cultivating the entire time, but just now, she had a feeling that someone was spying on her. This feeling was very strange, but he couldn't help but look over. She activated her power, but did not discover anything unusual. She could not help but frown. This villa area was protected by a great array. Ordinary people would not be able to enter without making a sound. She secretly comforted herself that she was too nervous. She took a deep breath and turned around. Suddenly, her pupils dilated as a person appeared in front of her. "You're back!" She leaped up like a mermaid out of the water and pounced towards Tang Zheng. She was completely different from her usual calm and composed self. Tang Zheng looked at her with a smile, opened his arms, and tightly hugged her in his embrace. He stroked her jet-black hair and said, "I made you worry." The two of them were of similar height. Marshall and his eyes met. Silent emotions were transmitted from each other's eyes and quickly ignited, turning into thick flames. Marshall raised his head passionately. Tang Zheng's mind was connected, and he immediately kissed her, his passion quickly burning. The room seemed to be on fire, and passion reverberated throughout the entire space. After a long time, the two of them lay on the bed in each other's embrace. Marshall's face was flushed red, like an obedient kitten nestled in his embrace, recounting their experiences during this period of time. When she heard about the dangers of the trip to the ghost realm, Marshall's breathing became hurried, and she anxiously grabbed his hand. As the night deepened, the hall became lively. Tang Zheng heard a few familiar voices and knew that Yi Dingdang and Fang Shishir had returned home from school. Go and call them in. It was inconvenient for him to show himself, so he could only repeatedly instruct Wu. Wu nodded, dressed neatly, turned around to look at her, and left the room. A moment later, with a creak, the door opened, and two figures impatiently rushed in. Like beautiful butterflies, they fluttered and danced as they threw themselves into Tang Zheng's embrace. Fang Shishir and Yi Dingdang leaned into her embrace at the same time. They looked at each other, and their deep longing for Tang Zheng overshadowed the shyness in their hearts. He could clearly feel the feelings of his children, and could not help but hug them tightly. Marshall watched from the side, her expression as usual, without the slightest bit of jealousy. Yi Dingdang lightly punched his chest and said coquettishly, "You came back a few days ago, why didn't you come to see us? You're too cruel, causing us to worry for so long." Her fist was like tickling, and he let her hit him to her heart's content. But how could she bear to use force? After 2 or 3 hits, she stopped, pouted her pink lips, and looked at him bitterly. Tang Zheng grabbed her fist and placed it on his chest, and said guiltily, "I'm sorry, I made you worry." "Hang, I'm not worried about you, it's Shishir who is worried to death." Yi Dingdang immediately changed her words, not speaking from her heart. Tang Zheng gave a smile that was not a smile, extended his finger, and lifted Fang Shishir's chin, and said, "It seems like I have to properly thank Shishir for not worrying about me, you can forget about it." Fang Shishir was extremely bashful, but was unwilling to move her gaze away. Her eyes were bright, and when she heard his words, she could not help but laugh. Yi Dingdang was greatly embarrassed, and weakly punched him a few more times and said, "You have no feminine heart, I'll hit you. Fang Shishir hurriedly said, "Don't listen to her, you don't know how worried she is about you. She doesn't want to eat or drink, can't you see that she has lost weight?" Did she really lose weight? Tang Zheng stared at Yi Dingdang, but his gaze fell on her chest. "I don't think she lost weight, she's even bigger," he said with deep meaning. They were all Tang Zheng's women, so how could they not understand the true meaning of these words? Immediately Yi Dingdang's face turned red, and fiercely punched him a few times. "Where are your eyes looking at?" "Of course it's looking at you," Tang Zheng said with a deadpan expression. Yi Dingdang was helpless, and rolled her eyes at this guy who spoke without thinking. Fang Shishir covered her small cherry lips, unable to hide her smile. It was to the extent that even Marshall, who was always serious in speech and manner, had a beautiful arc on her lips. Hang, with your flowery mouth, did you take advantage of us not being here this afternoon to do something bad behind our backs? Yi Dingdang suddenly had an idea, and glanced at Marshall from the corner of her eyes, and meaningfully said. Marshall's expression immediately froze. She did not expect that the flames of war would burn her body, and her face immediately flushed red. Yi Dingdang was also a woman, so seeing this scene, how could she not understand what was going on? She glared at Tang Jing, and her fingers fiercely pinched his waist. "Ayo!" Tang Jing immediately cried out exaggeratedly. Yi Dingdang hurriedly covered his mouth and sternly said, "Do you want others to find out? Didn't you not want to show yourself?" "Hee, you still understand me." Tang Jing laughed, but immediately felt two unkind gazes sweep over him. He was shocked and hurriedly said, "You all understand me, you all understand me." Only then did the two gazes slightly ease up. He could not help but sigh in his heart. It was indeed not an easy thing to have many women, and if the rain was not evenly distributed, it would cause internal conflicts. Below, Elder Yen is still discussing with Master. I heard that Ji Wuxiang sent people to try and persuade Elder Yen to pledge allegiance to him. Fang Shishir said with a serious expression. They already knew about the Azure Dragon Hall, and knew that the martial artists were no longer the same as before, and that the Azure Dragon Hall had undergone earth-shattering changes. Yi Dingdang and Marshall were both martial artists, so they were especially concerned about this, and could not help but subconsciously look at Tang Jing. Tang Jing muttered to himself, Ji Wuxiang's ambition is quite big. As long as it is a martial artist with a certain amount of power, he will not miss it. Ji Wuxiang had even recruited some unknown martial artists, so how could he let go of such a large martial artist power like the Yen family? They haven't come up with a countermeasure yet, so what are you going to do? Marshall asked with concern. Since Elder Yen rejected Ji Wuxiang the first time, then naturally there won't be a second time. Because Ji Wuxiang's pride won't let him pester and lobby the Yen family. Tang Jing analyzed. Yi Dingdang had an idea. He rolled his eyes and said worriedly, "Then you mean that Ji Wuxiang is going to make a move on the Yen family?" Tang Jing nodded his head heavily. Yen Patian definitely knew about this, which was why he came to find Tian Chanzi to discuss countermeasures. This was their last backer. Although Tang Jing was dead, the two of them were still deep allies. In times of danger, they should help each other. Fang Shishir said worriedly, Yen family has helped us many times. We can't just watch as Ji Wuxiang destroys the Yen family. Of course. Tang Jing nodded without hesitation. The Yen family rejected Ji Wuxiang, which means that they are reliable allies. Tang Jing was very clear about how attractive Ji Wuxiang's current grasp was to the martial artists. However, Yen Patian was able to resist the temptation and pressure and reject Ji Wuxiang's request. One could imagine how much courage he needed to do so. Just this point alone was enough to make Tang Jing feel deep veneration. Can Ji Wuxiang really transform martial artists? Yi Dingdang asked doubtfully. Tang Jing nodded his head heavily. Judging from the clues we have, he can indeed do all of this. Yi Dingdang's expression became extremely complicated. Ji Wuxiang is a genius. What he does is something that ordinary people, and even many powerful experts, cannot do. Tang Jing added. Then what should we do? Looking at old Master Yan's attitude, if he doesn't have a definite message, I'm afraid he won't even go back. Yi Dingdang recalled Yen Potion's expression and asked worriedly. This was indeed a difficult problem. Tang Jing wondered if he could strengthen his confidence if he appeared. The answer was yes. However, if he appeared, it was extremely likely that he would expose the news of him being alive. Why am I so old-fashioned? He even rejected Ji Wuxiang's olive branch. If I were still so wishy-washy and afraid that he would leak the news, then I would be too much of a good-for-nothing. Since Yen Patian had made this choice, then he was naturally the most trustworthy ally. What else am I worried about? He suddenly saw the light, dispelled the worry in his heart, and said to Fang Shishir, Shishir, invite Elder Yen back, but secretly bring him to the training room under the villa. I want to see him. Yen Patian did not come here alone, he had brought people with him. Tang Jing could trust Yen Patian, but he would not trust everyone. Therefore, even if it was the people around Yen Padian, he had to be on guard. After all, this was a critical moment, and he had to be on guard. Who could guarantee that Yen Padian did not have a nail planted by someone else? Fang Shirshir left the room, and after a while, Yen Padian indeed brought his subordinates and left the villa. The sky gradually darkened, and they disappeared into the night. After a long while, a person quietly returned. Under Fang Shirshir's support, he quietly entered the villa. At the same time, within the capital, a person passed through layers upon layers of sentry posts and arrived at the core of the room. Chapter 1405. The expression of the 100 transformations Star Sovereign kept changing. Now that he controlled most of the upper echelons, he had great power and limitless glory. As for his true identity, no one doubted it. After all, he had used the soul-searching technique on the chief and did not miss a single detail. If he could even disguise the details, who would doubt his identity? The Yen family is no longer a concern. Ji Wuxiang will not let them go. Another thing, didn't the news from the West say that there was a strange phenomenon? How's the investigation going? The 100 transformations Star Sovereign asked again. This time, we encountered a problem. Those witnesses were all killed and died miserably, so we don't know what happened at that time. What, they're all dead? The 100 transformations Star Sovereign said in surprise. I'm afraid it was done by the demon clan, afraid that others would know the details. This matter must be extraordinary, which is why the demon clan is mobilizing so many people. What exactly is going on? The 100 transformations Star Sovereign narrowed his eyes, deep in thought, but he couldn't figure it out. Ji Wuxiang and Qi Yu will definitely have a large-scale conflict. After all, the demon clan is taking revenge, surrounding and annihilating the martial warriors everywhere. What should we do? The 100 transformations Star Sovereign snorted and said, back then, I really underestimated Ji Wuxiang. He actually modified the martial warriors and activated the power of the stars. If he is allowed to grow stronger, he will definitely become a huge problem in the future. The 100 transformations Star Sovereign was still a cultivator in his bones. He was filled with hatred towards Ji Wuxiang for changing the martial warriors and the situation of the world. Then let's set up a plan in advance and take precautions. The 100 transformations Star Sovereign nodded. Of course I know. Let me think about how to provoke the two sides to fight to the death, so that I can sit back and reap the benefits. In the villa's underground training room, Yen Padian was bewildered. He chose to believe in Fang Shirshir and returned. He did not know what her intentions were. When he stepped into the training room, under the light, he immediately saw a familiar figure. This figure was very tall and straight, like a sword. Yen Potion's heart skipped a beat as he opened his eyes wide. He looked at the figure in disbelief and said, This. Tang Jing slowly turned around, and the two of them immediately looked at each other. Yen Padian was so excited that he almost had a heart attack. Young Master Tang, you're still alive. Yen Padian took a deep breath and finally recovered. Tang Jing looked at him with a smile, nodded and said, Elder Yen, I'm sorry for keeping this from you. Yen Padian was truly shocked. He originally did not believe the news of Tang Zheng's death. After all, Yen Qingyi had once said that he was the savior. However, after a long time had passed, he did not appear, and all signs indicated that he was indeed no longer in this world. He had no choice but to accept this reality. But now, he saw Tang Jing standing in front of him, alive and well. How could he remain calm? It was absolutely impossible for someone to pretend to be Tang Zheng and calm his mind. Tang Zheng was not someone who could be easily impersonated. His temperament and manner of speech could not be disguised at all. It doesn't matter. As long as young Master Tang is alive, it's a great thing. I'm really too happy. Yen Padian was so excited that his eyes turned red, and he lost his composure. I'm sorry, I lost my composure. I am indeed too happy. Yen Padian wiped the corner of his eyes and sighed. Tang Zheng understood his feelings and said, I understand, Elder Yen. Thank you for always believing in us and believing in Tian Chanzi. As soon as he finished speaking, Tian Chanzi walked out from the darkness. Yen Patin laughed without caring in the slightest. Now that the situation is so chaotic, if I don't believe you, who else can I believe? Although his words were somewhat helpless, his persistent trust was moving. Since young Master Tang is back, then we will have a backbone. Everything will be easy. The stone hanging in Yen Potion's heart fell to the ground as he said with relief. Elder Yen, you flatter me. How can I be the backbone of the group? Yen Patin said seriously, other than you, who else can do it? Tang Zheng smiled bitterly, and did not dwell on this question and said, Elder Yen, I know your current predicament. You are worried that Ji Wuxiang will harm the Yen family. You can rest assured that with me here, I will definitely not let the Yen family be harmed. Tang Zheng's words were firm and unquestionable. Yen Patin nodded his head heavily. He did not question him at all, but unconditionally believed him and said, with young Master Tang's words, it is enough. Of course, what we have to do is not only that. We can't just passively take a beating. We have to take the initiative to attack. Tang Jing changed the topic and said, take the initiative to attack? What wise ideas does young Master Tang have? Yen Patin looked at him curiously. Not only that, the others also looked at Tang Jing curiously. After careful consideration, Tang Jing knew that a war would definitely break out between Ji Wuxiang and Qi Yu, but he had to speed up all of this, so that the flames of war would burn even faster and even more fiercely. We are going to attack Ji Wuxiang's troops. Tang Zheng said casually, but his words were like a heavy bomb exploding with a loud bang. Everyone looked at him in shock. This was an extremely risky move. Ji Wuxiang was no longer the same as before. He would definitely defend himself to the death. If they were to attack him, it would definitely be an extremely risky move. Tian Chanzi directly said, it's too risky, we can't. Fang Shishir and the others also nodded, unwilling to let Tang Jing take any more risks and suffer any losses. Tang Jing understood their feelings, but still persisted, I know everyone's feelings, but we have to do this, otherwise, we won't be able to completely ignite the flames of war between Ji Wuxiang and Qi Yu. Right now, no matter which side they are on, they are all powerful and cannot be underestimated. We have to avoid direct contact with them as much as possible. Seeing that Tang Jing had already made up his mind, everyone knew that it was useless to persuade him, and all of them had worried expressions. All of you are in the open, so there's no way for you to carry out this mission. Only a dead person, like me, is the most suitable candidate. They won't suspect me. Tang Jing added. Although everyone was worried about his safety, if they thought about it carefully, this was indeed a good idea. Furthermore, I am no longer the same as before. How can an ordinary person hurt me? I am at the second stage of the Mahayana stage. Tang Jing said confidently. Yen Patin turned pale with fright and muttered to himself, second stage of the Mahayana stage? That was a realm that he did not even dare to hope for. Stars appeared in his eyes as he stared at Tang Jing like a fan looking at a celebrity. This is a coincidence. Everyone will reach this realm in the future. Tang Jing comforted. Yen Patin laughed bitterly. How could it be that easy to reach the second stage of the Mahayana stage? To martial warriors, that was the martial emperor realm. Tang Jing looked deeply at Yen Patin. He still had one more thing in his heart that he did not make clear. He wanted to investigate the truth of the Azure Dragon Palace, and the most important thing was to find out how Ji Wuxiang had transformed the martial warriors. If he could know the mystery behind it, and if he was very familiar with heavenly chess, it was completely possible for him to replicate Ji Wuxiang's success. He also had many martial warriors by his side, so he could completely follow the instructions and transform the martial warriors by his side. At that time, the originally weak martial warriors would also erupt with great power. The two sides secretly discussed for a while, and Yen Patin carefully left with a belly full of thoughts. Tang Jing decided to stay for the night and let the four symbols venerable see everyone. They were all surprised by his change. Since he had seen Yen Patin, Tang Jing might as well see the witch clan elder. When the elder saw the living Tang Jing, his reaction was huge and he immediately burst into tears. During the period of time when Tang Jing was dead, the spirit of the entire witch clan seemed to have been sucked away, and anyone who saw it would be moved. Tang Zheng could not bear for them to be kept in the dark. Moreover, he had another goal. The four symbols were the guardians of the witch clan. He wanted to ask the elders if they knew more about the four symbols. When the elders saw the four symbols that had transformed into humans, his reaction was even greater than that of Tang Zheng. He was extremely shocked, and naturally he did not have any extra information to provide to Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng had no choice but to give up. In the dead of night, he sat alone in the training room. All the girls knew that he was about to face a very dangerous journey, so they didn't disturb him. They wanted him to conserve his energy and be in his best condition to face the possible danger. Tang Zheng might as well immerse his mind in the heaven realm. The martial warriors that the black hole had absorbed a few days ago had turned into strands of life force and appeared in the heaven realm. When Tang Zheng saw this life force, he couldn't help but think of the words of the four symbols regarding the creation of the world. This world had already been successfully established, but what was lacking the most was the process of creation. This was the most difficult part. At the same time, he had a new understanding of space. In the past, he had mistakenly thought that the Sumeru world and the Sumeru ring were two different spatial worlds. In fact, he was ridiculously wrong. That could not be considered a world at all, but a warehouse. A true spatial world was a world like the heaven realm that could create things. The Sumeru world's level was much higher than ordinary Sumeru ring, but it was impossible to create things. It could only store things. There was an essential difference. He did not tell others about the heaven realm. This seemed too shocking. Before he figured it out, it could not be considered public knowledge. There were countless big worlds and small worlds in the universe. Who was the one who created these worlds? Who was the creator? Such a question arose in his heart, but he could not find the answer at all. Now, he was also a creator, so he could not help but want to explore the secrets. However, he could only slowly explore this by himself. No one else could help him at all. From the words of Tian Chanzi and the Empyrean Fairy, they had never mentioned this matter. They did not know that people could also be creators. He was not in a hurry to use the strands of life force. His mind withdrew from the heaven realm and entered the Sumeru world. Azura was still quietly staying in place, like a statue. Not far away was Emosia. He noticed Tang Zheng's consciousness and immediately asked, "Tang Zheng, what is Tian Chanzi's decision?" Emosia had always wanted to check whether Tian Chanzi still had the remnant soul of the Yellow Emperor in his body, but Tian Chanzi did not give him the chance. "How much time has it been? What's the hurry?" Tang Zheng said lazily. People under the eaves, Emosia had no choice but to shut his mouth resentfully. Tang Zheng patrolled around the Sumeru world. This was very different from the heaven realm. In the heaven realm, he did not need to deliberately patrol. Everything was like a movie, clearly displayed in his mind. Chapter 1406. In the corner, Xiaobai had been sleeping. But at this moment, was the one lying on the ground still Xiaobai? A sharp horn had grown out of its forehead, and a ball of fiery red hair surrounded the horn like a cluster of flames. It had shed its original hair, and its body was covered with a thick layer of new hair that looked like steel needles that were standing upside down. Its body had also grown bigger, and it looked like a small bull that was full of vigor. 4 balls of flames burned silently on its 4 hooves, emitting an inexplicable power. However, its eyes were still closed. Xiaobai had been sleeping all this time because it had absorbed a lot of dragon souls. Now, it seemed to have completely refined the dragon souls and become like this. Tang Zheng was surprised and happy. He wanted to wake it up, but he was afraid of disturbing it. In the end, he made a decision and called out softly, "Xiaobai." Xiaobai slowly opened its eyes, and 2 laser-like flames shot out from its eyes. Tang Zheng jumped in fright and dodged to the side in time. Only then did he luckily escape the calamity. Wherever the flames passed, even the air would emit a burnt smell. Everything was unable to withstand it and was charred black one after another. Seeing this, Tang Zheng's heart trembled. This ability was not something that Xiaobai had before, so it meant that it was a new ability. Clearly, Xiaobai had evolved and transformed again. The transformation this time was the biggest change. and even its appearance had undergone a tremendous change. Although it could also become bigger in the past, it was not as majestic and awe-inspiring as it was now. He looked at Xiaobai with a burning gaze, as if he wanted to carefully distinguish its changes. However, he could not help but come to a disappointing conclusion. The biggest change was not visible to the naked eye at all, and it could only be seen clearly by itself. As if to prove this, Xiaobai's gaze fell on Tang Jing, and it called out faintly, "Master." This voice was extremely clear, but it was faintly dignified. It was completely different from before. Tang Jing understood and hurriedly asked, "Xiaobai, how do you feel?" Xiaobai nodded. "I feel great." As soon as he finished speaking, the flames on his 4 hooves rose into the air with a whoosh. Xiaobai immediately stepped on the flames and slowly rose into the air. Tang Jing raised his head and looked over. Xiaobai was like a god, giving off an awe-inspiring aura. As expected of the king of the outer sky. He has such a powerful aura. The Scarlet Moon Beast's loyalty and trust in him was not in vain. However, this master made Tang Jing very emotional. Although its strength had made a qualitative leap, it still hadn't forgotten its master. The flames under Xiaobai's hooves gradually subsided, and it landed in front of Tang Jing. It raised its head and affectionately nudged Tang Jing's palm with its head. Hiss! Tang Jing sucked in a breath of cold air. The hair was like steel needles, pricking his flesh painfully. This feeling only lasted for a second, and the needle-like hair actually softened, becoming as soft as feathers. Tang Jing didn't feel any discomfort at all. He was shocked. Xiaobai's change was so big that even its hair had changed so much. Tang Jing looked at him in shock and exclaimed, "Xiaobai, your transformation is too big." The corners of Xiaobai's mouth curled up as he said happily, "This is all thanks to Master. Those dragon souls are really too powerful, they actually allowed me to awaken." Awaken? Tang Jing was stunned, not knowing what it meant. Xiaobai didn't hide it and quickly explained, "I didn't know my past and origin because I wasn't an adult, so the imprint of my ancestors in my blood hadn't awakened." Xiaobai couldn't hide the emotion in his voice. Awakening is not an easy thing. Other than one's own strength, one also needs a huge amount of energy as a source of power. The energy I accumulated bit by bit and the dragon soul's energy stimulated all of this, as if a lock was unlocked. The memories of my people rushed into my brain like a tide, testing my nerves with difficulty. Xiaobai said slowly, but every word was like thunder exploding in Tang Jing's ears. Xiaobai had awakened and found out about his past. This was like the beginning of fate. It was no longer Xiaobai but the king of the sky beyond sky. If Scarlet Lunar saw this scene, it would be very excited. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that its eyes would be filled with tears. Tang Jing was also very excited. His heart was beating fast, and his emotions were fluctuating. "Xiaobai, what did you remember?" After a while, Tang Jing finally couldn't hold back his curiosity and asked. "This isn't just remembering, it's passing down from generation to generation. Of course, it's not just memories, but also responsibility and glory." Xiaobai changed his tone and said seriously. Tang Jing's heart thumped, and he nodded heavily. Xiaobai continued, "The Sky Beyond Sky clan has always been the ruler of the Sky Beyond Sky. This is the glory passed down from generation to generation, and it can't be tarnished. But in the end, it was tarnished, and even the glory became a joke. This is a great humiliation. Now that I'm the only one left, I want to wash away this humiliation. I want to return to the Sky Beyond Sky and lead my people to destroy the Earthlings. I want to restore the Sky Beyond Sky to its former glory." Tang Jing's emotions surged and he asked, "You want to bring people back to the Sky Beyond Sky? But the enemy has a lot of people. Even the cultivators who were expelled couldn't get any benefits. You might not succeed." Tang Jing spoke frankly. He was not afraid of Xiaobai being angry at all. This was because these were his words from the bottom of his heart. If he didn't say it, then no one else would. Xiaobai was not angry and said, "I want to recruit people and build a strong army." "Recruit people and buy horses?" Tang Jing was shocked to hear these words from its mouth. This didn't seem like something that would come out of Xiao Bai's mouth. However, Xiao Bai had undergone earth-shaking changes, so it wasn't strange for it to say this. Yes, I will definitely bring them back to the sky beyond sky, take back everything that originally belonged to me, and restore my clan's former glory. Xiao Bai said unceasingly. Tang Zheng naturally wouldn't sweep away its momentary excitement, and said with joy, "Then I will definitely lend you a hand." "Thank you, Master," Xiao Bai said. "When the time comes, we will lead the army back to the sky beyond sky, defeat the strong enemy, and take back everything that belongs to us." Tang Zheng waved his fist and added. Little White excitedly scratched the ground with its claws, looking eager to give it a try. Tang Zheng knew that this was not an easy matter, and there were many difficult problems, such as returning to the sky beyond sky. The two spaces are separated, and it won't be easy to return. It's not something that can be done casually, Tang Zheng said worriedly. Xiao Bai's smile grew wider and wider, and said meaningfully, "Master, I must tell you a piece of good news." "What good news?" Tang Zheng was stunned. "The sky beyond sky is not that far away, we can go there at any time." These words were earth-shattering and Tang Zheng was stunned. The 3D floating battle game Master of the Whole People adapted by Heavenly Silkworm Potato has been released to beta testing. Search. Chapter 1407. Xiao Bai's words were earth-shattering and deeply shocked Tang Zheng. The sky beyond heaven was not unreachable and could be reached at any time? How was this possible? In Tang Zheng's impression, the sky beyond heaven was always unreachable and the only way to reach it was through the Buzhou Mountain's stairway to heaven. After Xiao Bai awakened, could it be that it could break through the spatial isolation between the two worlds? This was truly inconceivable. Seeing that Tang Zheng was silent, Xiao Bai excitedly said, "Master, are you very happy?" Tang Zheng did not comment. "Xiao Bai, how do I go to the sky beyond heaven?" Xiao Bai raised its head and proudly said, "Master, you also know that the spatial isolation between the two worlds has become very weak, and after I absorbed the dragon soul, I gained a certain divine ability of the dragon clan. That is the divine ability to travel through space." Divine ability to travel through space? Tang Zheng was shocked. "Yes, the dragon clan is very talented in traveling through space and my clan is also very talented in this area. After I absorbed the dragon soul promoted the evolution of this divine ability." Xiao Bai explained. Tang Zheng was enlightened but his heart trembled. The dragon clan had the divine ability to travel through space. This was not difficult to understand as it could be seen from the dragon clan's ability to travel through space. In addition, dragon slayers could also travel through space. Perhaps it was because they absorbed the dragon soul that they gained this divine ability. Tang Zheng was suspicious. "Didn't I also absorb the dragon soul? Why don't I have the divine ability to travel through space? Maybe it's because my cultivation isn't deep enough." Tang Zheng had always wanted to explore the secrets of the sky beyond heaven. Since he could go to the sky beyond heaven without using the stairway to heaven, he naturally would not miss this good opportunity. He hurriedly asked, "Xiao Bai, since you can travel to the sky beyond heaven, why don't we go explore it?" Xiao Bai heard this and hesitated. Tang Zheng looked at it in surprise and asked, "What's wrong?" "Master, I can cross over to the heavens beyond heaven, but only my consciousness can cross over. My body can't cross over yet." Xiao Bai stammered. "What? Divine sense transmigration?" Tang Zheng was taken aback. He never thought that there was such a thing as divine sense transmigration. Xiao Bai said embarrassedly, "Yes, this is because my cultivation is still not enough. If my cultivation increased greatly, I would definitely be able to open the spatial door and let my body pass through." Tang Zheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This was really a roller coaster ride, going up and down for a while. It was extremely exciting. "Master, although there's no way to go to the heavens beyond heaven physically, wouldn't it be safer to use one's consciousness to go there? After all, it's too dangerous there." Xiao Bai had an idea and spoke from another perspective. Tang Zheng was slightly startled, but he had to nod and admit that what it said made sense. Then let's go to heavens beyond now. Xiao Bai said impatiently. Tang Zheng was taken aback. Could it be that divine sense transmigration can also bring other people along? Of course, my cultivation can temporarily bring one person at a time. Xiao Bai nodded and said. Tang Zheng's heart thumped. Divine sense transmigration could also allow one to experience the wonders and power of the heavens beyond heaven. How could he miss out on such a great opportunity? He nodded heavily and said excitedly, "That's good. There's no time to lose. We'll set off immediately." Xiao Bai almost cheered in joy and said, "Then I must leave Sumi Tian first." Tang Zheng's thoughts moved. Xiao Bai left Sumi Tian and appeared in front of Tang Zheng. Xiao Bai's body was huge. He reached out his claws and pulled Tang Zheng's hand. Tang Zheng moved his head and let him pull, his eyes filled with anticipation. Shwa! A fiery red ray of light shot out from the horn on White Yi's forehead. The air surged and ripples spread out in all directions. A crack was torn in the air, constantly expanding in both directions. Behind the crack was pitch black and nothing could be seen. "This is the spatial gate?" Tang Zheng asked curiously. "Yes, but right now my cultivation is too weak. I can barely maintain the spatial gate. There's no way for physical objects to pass through the spatial gate. I can only use divine sense," Xiao Bai explained. "But if divine sense leaves the body for too long, won't it affect the body?" Usually, Tang Zheng's divine sense couldn't leave the body for too long, so he had this question. Xiao Bai smiled confidently. "That's in this space. Your divine sense won't be affected by this when it travels to another space." "Is that so?" Tang Zheng was skeptical. But since Xiao Bai was so confident, then of course he would choose to believe it. "Master, use your divine sense to enter the spatial gate with me," Xiao Bai said. The man and the beast seemed to have turned into puppets. They didn't move, and even their eyes didn't blink. Two divine senses floated out of their bodies and flew into the spatial gate. With a schwa, the spatial gate disappeared again. The air calmed down as if nothing had happened. But the two divine senses passed through the dark spatial gate. Darkness filled his eyes. Tang Zheng was full of curiosity. However, he couldn't detect the situation around him. Suddenly, another spatial gate appeared in front of him. They disappeared into the darkness with a whoosh. His eyes suddenly opened up and became incomparably bright. A fiery red color appeared in front of him. This fiery red color was like balls of flames, swaying with the wind. It was incomparably enchanting. But in the next second, Tang Zheng saw clearly that this was actually a towering tree that covered the sky. The fiery red color he saw was the leaves. Layer upon layer, swaying with the wind, really like balls of flames. "What kind of tree is this? I've never seen it before." Tang Zheng was very curious. "This is called a fire tree. Don't think that these leaves are like flames. They're real flames. If you touch them, you'll be burned." Xiao Bai had awakened, and a lot of information about sky beyond heaven would naturally appear in his consciousness. This was a kind of consciousness that was passively triggered, so when he saw this towering tree, he subconsciously recognized it. They were communicating through divine sense, so there was no need to speak at all. It was very convenient. Fire tree. Tang Zheng came to a realization and couldn't help but take a few more glances. This sky beyond heaven was indeed magical. It actually had such a magical tree. He could not wait to get out of the woods and see the wide world outside. Both parties' minds were connected, and they quickly flew out. Because it was divine sense, they didn't need to walk at all. They flew to the edge of the forest in an instant. Here was another scene. The towering tree was lush, but it was not a fire tree. Instead, it seemed to be in a world of ice and snow. All the trees were snow white, and the leaves were like snowflakes. After Xiao Bai's introduction, Tang Zheng knew that this was an ice tree, which was the opposite of a fire tree. The ice tree was like ice, and the leaves were real snowflakes. A gust of wind blew, and the leaves fell, and the snowflakes danced. It was as if it was snowing heavily. Tang Zheng's vision was broadened, and he forgot to go back. He left the forest with Xiao Bai, and the vision ahead became open. One mountain peak after another came into view. Tang Zheng was dumbfounded, and his mouth opened so wide that a duck egg could be stuffed in. Why is this mountain peak floating in the air? After a long time, Tang Zheng said hesitantly. He was deeply shocked. Since he was young, he had never seen a mountain peak floating in the air like a piece of leaf. There are thousands of mountains in the outland. There are mountains that stand on the ground like in the human world, and there are also mountains like this floating in the air. You'll get used to it slowly. Xiaobai comforted. There are all kinds of strange things in this world. Today is really an eye-opener. Tang Zheng sighed. In the future, when I take back the outland, this is equivalent to your home, Master. You can come here at any time. You won't be surprised if you see it often. Xiaobai said. Tang Zheng smiled bitterly. Okay, then I'll just see what other strange things are in the outland. Both parties looked like they were sightseeing and they went straight ahead. From afar, they saw people coming and going on the floating mountain peak. They tacitly decided to go up and find out. Although the mountain peak was floating in the air, it was not difficult for them. With a thought, they flew to the top of the mountain peak and saw a vast plaza and a magnificent building. However, black smoke was everywhere, and battle cries shook the sky. A battle was happening on the mountain peak. Tang Zheng was shocked. He did not expect to see a big battle as soon as he arrived. Both sides were not weak, but one side obviously had the upper hand. These people look like cultivators from the human world. Tang Zheng looked at a group of people. These are the remnants of the traders from the outland. Xiaobai pointed at another group of people and said. Tang Zheng's attention was attracted. He had always been curious about the natives of the outland, especially when he saw Xiaobai and the Red Moon Beast. These so-called remnants of the traders were the same as humans. Moreover, they were very strong. Tang Zheng saw with his own eyes that one of them tore another Yuanying realm cultivator into half. Tang Zheng was excited. He witnessed the battle in the outland with his own eyes. However, his heart gradually turned cold. No wonder the demon race tried so hard to return to the human world. Their days were not easy. The natives of the outland were too strong. Master, look over there. Suddenly, Xiaobai pointed at a huge stone tablet in front of the plaza and shouted. The stone tablet was dozens of meters tall. On it, there were 3 ancient words, Kingsman. Kingsman. Tang Zheng was shocked. If it was any other sect in the cultivation world, he might not know. However, he was very familiar with Kingsman. Tian Chanzi was from Kingsman. Fang Shishir was Tian Chanzi's disciple, which meant that she was also a descendant of Kingsman. Tian Chanzi once said that Kingsman was a big sect in the cultivation world. After the demon race returned, he said that Kingsman had declined and was struggling to survive. Now, it seemed that it was true. Kingsman had been attacked by the natives of the outland. Was this not a catastrophe? He had a deep relationship with Kingsman. He became anxious as he watched the people of Kingsman die one by one. However, he was only a strand of consciousness and could not attack others. Therefore, he could only be anxious. He could not help Kingsman. The people of Kingsman fell one by one. The magnificent buildings collapsed and turned into piles of rubble. Tang Zheng was anxious, but there was nothing he could do. Chapter 1408. Tang Zheng was burning with anxiety. If Kingsman was destroyed, Tian Chanzi would definitely be extremely sad. Judging from Tian Chanzi's daily words and deeds, he had deep feelings for his sect. Naturally, he could not sit back and do nothing. Otherwise, it would become a big regret in his heart. Xiaobai saw through Tang Zheng's thoughts and asked, "You want to help them?" "Yes, this is Tian Chanzi's sect. I can't just stand by and watch them die. Do you have a way?" Tang Zheng asked expectantly. "It's not that there's no way at all, but we're divine senses. We can't really attack the enemy," Xiaobai said awkwardly. "If we can't really attack, then how can we help them?" Tang Zheng asked suspiciously. Xiaobai laughed. "Master, we can scare those traitors away." "Scare them away?" Tang Zheng thought for a moment and immediately understood Xiaobai's intention. This was purely to scare people. But would those people be scared away? "Master, after all, I'm a former royal of this world. This is my world, so I can cleverly use some of the laws of the outland, such as this. As soon as he finished speaking, the sky became gloomy. It was daytime, but suddenly it became dark, as if night had fallen. The two sides who were fighting found themselves in a dark world. They subconsciously stopped fighting and looked up at the sky. The sky was dark, and there was not even a trace of light. The light soared into the sky, and everyone immediately activated their magic weapons. The colorful light illuminated the world, and they could see each other clearly. But both sides very tacitly stopped fighting and looked at each other. They did not understand what was going on, and they suspected that it was the other side's trick. When Tang Jing saw this scene, he was overjoyed. This was all thanks to Little White, but if he wanted to scare the enemy away, he was still lacking a little. Master, now it's up to you. You have to scare them away by talking, Xiaobai reminded. Talk? We're divine senses, can we talk? Tang Jing was surprised. Don't you still have me? I used my divine ability, so you can naturally speak. Xiaobai said mysteriously. Tang Jing no longer hesitated. After mulling it over for a moment, his voice resonated like a great bell. Traitors, you'd better surrender and accept your punishment. How dare you stir up trouble again? How presumptuous! This voice was even louder than thunder, clearly entering everyone's ears, shaking their minds. Both parties were startled. They looked around and looked up at the sky, but they couldn't find a single trace. They were shocked. Who was this? He came without a trace and created a huge commotion, yet no one could discover his whereabouts. The only explanation was that his strength was ridiculously high. Kingsuman was secretly delighted. They seemed to understand that this person was targeting the enemy, not them. This so-called traitor was definitely not them. The forces of Beyond Heaven were more shocked than the people of Kingsuman. This was because they understood what traitors meant. They were indeed traitors, but almost no one mentioned this matter anymore. It was a taboo. Now that the old score had been dug up, all of them felt ashamed. They felt guilty, but their anger also surged up with a whoosh. Everyone was afraid of being poked in their weak spots. This was their weak spot. Who is it? Come out. The people of Beyond Heaven shouted loudly, trying to find the culprit behind this. I'm right in front of you. You're too weak to see me. Are you blaming me? Tang Jing said mysteriously. The people of Beyond Heaven gasped and stepped back. They channeled their energy and focused, but still couldn't see anything. They looked at each other, and the fear in their hearts grew stronger. They had already tried their best, but they still couldn't see the culprit. Who are you? They asked hoarsely. A bunch of traitors. How dare you ask about my identity? Tang Jing reprimanded. After hearing this, the people of Beyond Heaven were even more afraid and retreated to the edge of the square. Seeing this, Kingsuman was confused. He couldn't figure out what was going on. Looking at the expressions of the enemy, there must be more to this. Xiaobai saw the enemy's reaction and praised, Master, your words are very effective. They've been frightened. Tang Jing laughed, then I'll work harder. Your free and unfettered days won't be long. The crimes you committed in the past are too numerous to be recorded. In the near future, you will pay the price for your crimes. Tang Jing said, adding fuel to the fire. After hearing this, the people of Beyond Heaven were even more frightened. Many of them already had a rumor in their hearts. It was said that the royal family wasn't completely wiped out, but some escaped. The empress was pregnant and escaped. After so many years, could it be that the royal family had returned? Or could it be that the prince in the empress' belly was born and came back for revenge? Anyone who had done something wrong would feel fear, and these traitors were no exception. When they thought of this, they already had thoughts of retreating. The royal family wasn't easy to deal with. If it really was the royal family, Beyond Heaven would be in chaos. It would be meaningless to continue fighting here. Let's go! With a loud shout, the crowd retreated and jumped down from the mountain peak floating in the air. A gust of wind blew, and a giant bird appeared out of thin air. It caught these people and flew away. Tang Jing looked at the giant bird, and memories came flooding back. He remembered that when he was at the peak of Mount Buzhou, he saw a glimpse of Beyond Heaven. Among them, there was a giant bird like this. It covered the sky and was much bigger than an airplane. In the glimpse, there were other beasts and a magnificent city that stretched as far as the eye could see. This time, however, he didn't see it. So that giant bird was a mount. Tang Zheng suddenly realized. That's the Kuanpeng. Xiao Bai introduced. The Kuanpeng is huge. I don't know how many thousand miles it is. Tang Zheng immediately remembered a mythical beast recorded in an ancient book. Wasn't that the Kuanpeng? So the ancient book described the scenery of beyond heaven. Did the author of the book also come from beyond heaven and spread it to the human world? That's my mother's description. Someone wrote it down after hearing about it. Xiao Bai explained. Tang Zheng suddenly realized that Xiao Bai's mother, the former empress of the royal family, came to the human world. Then she only said a few words about the giant bird, and that was why someone wrote it down. The Kuanpeng was huge, but it was not slow. With a flap of its wings, it flew hundreds of meters away and disappeared in a few breaths. The people of Kingsaman watched the enemy disappear into the distance. When they were completely out of sight, they cheered. Oh! The cheers were thunderous. May I ask which senior helped us? Everyone in Kingsaman will remember his kindness. The people of Kingsaman asked. Tang Zheng thought for a moment and said, a senior in Kingsaman is a close friend of mine. It was nothing. A senior in your sect? The people of Kingsaman murmured. Over the years, Kingsaman had been declining. Their lives were miserable. They wondered which senior was a close friend of such a master. Judging from the enemy's reaction, this master seemed to be closely related to beyond heaven. How could their senior be related to him? They could not figure it out no matter how hard they racked their brains. May I ask who the senior in our sect is? Everyone in the sect will also be grateful for senior's great kindness. Someone asked. Tang Zheng felt that he should let Tian Chanzi explain it to them later. So, he pretended to be thoughtful and said, you will know in the future. Since that was the case, the people of Kingsaman did not dare to ask further. Master, time is limited. I can't hold on any longer. If you have anything else to say it quickly. Xiao Bai urged. Tang Zheng's heart trembled. Although Kingsaman is declining now, it will rise again in the future. You must maintain your strength. Remember this. The people of Kingsaman were struggling on the edge of despair. When they heard these words, they were filled with excitement and anticipation. Yes, we will follow your instructions. As soon as he finished speaking, the scene in front of him changed. He was surrounded by darkness. Then, a red crack appeared and he flew into it. Then, he returned to his own body. The two of them opened their eyes at the same time. Tang Zheng quickly asked, Xiao Bai, why are you back so soon? Xiao Bai said shamefully, Master, in the end, in order to scare away those traitors, I used up too much of my divine power. In the end, I couldn't do it, so I had to come back in time. Otherwise, I would have stayed in that world forever. Tang Zheng was stunned. He knew that the situation was very dangerous. It was also very risky for him to use his divine power to scare away the enemy. Xiao Bai, thank you. Xiao Bai grinned. Master, this is what I should do. In the future, we will definitely return to the heavens beyond. The people of Kingsaman will not be in danger under our protection. Tang Zheng smiled and patted his head. You are very thoughtful. When Xiao Bai recovers, I will take you to the heavens beyond. Then, we will be able to find out more about the heavens beyond, Xiao Bai said. There is no hurry. We have other things to do. Tang Zheng did not mind. Xiao Bai asked excitedly, what is it? We are going to Dianan to find out Ji Wuxiang's secret. Wow, this is fun. I always thought that Ji Wuxiang was not a good person. It is true. Xiao Bai gritted his teeth and rubbed his hands. Master, don't worry. We will find out everything about him and punish him severely. Xiao Bai, Ji Wuxiang is not the same as before. You must not act recklessly. Do you understand? Tang Zheng warned. Xiao Bai blinked and said wittily, Master, don't worry. I will listen to your orders. The sky was bright. The two of them left quietly. They walked under the morning light and headed towards Dianan. No one noticed their whereabouts. However, there was one thing that they did not expect. In the heavens beyond, Tang Zheng's words caused a huge uproar. The news spread all over the heavens beyond through various channels. Suddenly, the heavens beyond was in an uproar. Many people were ready to make a move. For a long time, the rumors about the royal family had never stopped. It was true, but many people were skeptical. However, it was different this time. The rumors were true. The royal family was not completely wiped out. Chapter 1409. At noon, Dianan was still sunny, while Yanjing in the north was already cool in autumn. Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai stood on the somersault cloud and looked down at Dianan. There were many dangerous roads in Dianan, and the scenery was beautiful. Looking down from the sky, it was like a pearl on the land of Huaxia. However, now this pearl was full of danger, and no one dared to underestimate it. In order to provoke the conflict between Qi Yu and Ji Wuxiang, Tang Zheng naturally could not show his true face. Therefore, he patted Xiao Bai's head, and a ball of light appeared on his face. In the next second, he changed into another appearance. Xiao Bai, go to Sumer world for a while. Xiao Bai raised his head, looked at this strange master, and reluctantly returned to Sumer world. Tang Zheng touched his cheek. This was a familiar face, Song Yu. Qi Yu occupied Song Yu's body, and Tang Zheng became Song Yu. Naturally, he was Qi Yu's current appearance. With this new appearance, Ji Wuxiang would treat him as Qi Yu. The somersault cloud landed silently in a secluded area, and he swaggered into the city. The Long family in Dianan had surrendered to Ji Wuxiang. Of course, he could only use the Long family as a breakthrough. He believed that Ji Wuxiang would definitely show up. He had been to the Long family more than once, and he was familiar with the way to the Long family's huge manor. Compared to before, this manor was bigger than before. Obviously, with the help of Ji Wuxiang, the Long family was dominant and powerful. They were the real local emperors of Dianan. The Long family manor was heavily guarded. When he was still more than 100 meters away, he was stopped by two people. This is not a place you should be. Go back. The guard treated him as a passerby who had taken the wrong way. Tang Zheng smiled slightly. Since he was here to make trouble, he naturally had to make a big fuss. He didn't seem to move at all as he continued to walk forward. The two guards were sent flying, as if they had been struck by gravity. The air seemed to have solidified, and everything became extremely slow. After Tang Zheng walked past them, they fell heavily to the ground and couldn't get up again. The commotion here immediately attracted the attention of others. Dozens of people rushed out of the manor, each of them burly and strong. They were obviously martial artists. However, in Tang Zheng's eyes, they were still not enough to attract his attention. He took large strides forward. It seemed like a small step, but in reality he took a big step forward. He covered a distance of 2 meters. In the blink of an eye, he was at the entrance of the manor. The people who had rushed up were all sent flying and slammed into the door. The door fell down with a loud bang and smashed into the ground, causing dust to fly up into the sky. He strolled through the door as if he was returning home, strolling leisurely. In the eyes of others, this place was like a dragon's lair or a tiger's den, but in his eyes, it was like a walk in a park. He didn't even make a move, and his invisible attack caused the invaders' attacks to disintegrate into nothingness. When he walked into the manor and saw more warriors, he was even more certain that after Long Xianyuan submitted to Ji Wuxiang, the Long family had become an important stronghold of the Azure Dragon Palace. Long Xianyuan had made the right move and strengthened the Long family. It was a pity that his son didn't have half of his vision and ability back then. Otherwise, he wouldn't have died so early. He sighed slightly and walked towards the main building. Although the manor was large, one could tell at a glance where the main building was. This was because the scale and grandeur of the manor were far from what other buildings could compare to. Many warriors rushed over from all directions. He suddenly sped up and passed through the crowd like a gust of wind. Everywhere he passed, everyone fell to the ground in disarray, looking battered and exhausted. Bang! With a muffled sound, a person flew out of the main building and landed heavily on the ground. The moment his feet landed on the ground, the earth seemed to tremble. Tang Jing narrowed his eyes and looked at the other party curiously. Long Xianyuan. Long Xianyuan had the demeanor of an immortal. His long hair fluttered in the wind, and his beard and hair were all white. However, in Tang Zheng's eyes, he wasn't tall at all. He could clearly feel the change in Long Xuanyuan's strength. Ji Wuxiang was indeed powerful, causing Long Xianyuan to undergo such an earth-shattering change. He didn't know how he did it. One of the purposes of his trip was to find out how Ji Wuxiang did it. Although Long Xianyuan had already been transformed, he probably only knew how and not why, but he could still ask for some clues. Song Yu. Long Xianyuan blurted out, his expression suddenly changed. He immediately realized something, and changed his words. You are not Song Yu, you are Qi Yu. Obviously, Ji Wuxiang also knew that Qi Yu had taken over Song Yu's body. Tang Zheng's face was cold, and he said arrogantly, Long Xianyuan, you are not qualified to speak to me, called Ji Wuxiang out. How dare you call the High Lord by his name? Long Xianyuan was furious. Tang Zheng said disdainfully, Ji Wuxiang, an insignificant person, what's so important about his name? After pausing for a moment, he continued to mock. Long Xianyuan, you have become Ji Wuxiang's lackey, which means you are my enemy. If he doesn't appear, then the one who will be unlucky can only be you. Before he finished speaking, Tang Jing made his move. He extended his hand and grabbed towards Long Xianyuan. In order to hide his divine ability, he deliberately did not use the heaven-swallowing technique, but used a common divine ability. His big hand grabbed like a dragon's claw, and a whirlwind appeared in his palm. With a push of his big hand, it flew towards Long Xianyuan. This whirlwind was like an angry dragon, as if it was roaring and whistling. Long Xianyuan realized that the situation was dire. He was on the verge of life and death. He did not dare to be careless. He stretched out his hand and took out a long spear. With a shake of the spear, the whistling sound of the spear did not stop. Like a fairy scattering flowers, the spear faced the whirlwind. Boom! With a loud sound, the spear dissipated and the whirlwind trembled. It looked like it was about to dissipate, but miraculously gathered together. Long Xianyuan turned pale with fright. He hurriedly retreated and finally soared into the air and flew up. The whirlwind struck the beautiful building, causing debris to fly everywhere and collapse with a loud bang. Tang Zheng looked at Long Xianyuan in astonishment. His strength was not low. One must know that although he did not use his famous consummate skill, he was still at the second stage of the Mahayana realm, and his attacks were also at the level of the Mahayana realm. However, Long Xianyuan had successfully avoided this calamity. From this, it could be determined that his cultivation should have already reached the Martial King realm, or even the Martial Emperor realm. In the past, he was at the Grandmaster realm. Whether it was the Martial King realm or the Martial Emperor realm, it was a qualitative leap that was faster than a rocket. Long Xianyuan, not bad, you were actually able to dodge this attack. Ji Wuxiang has really given you old fellows a second chance. I wonder what your current cultivation is. Tang Jing deliberately provoked him. Long Xuanyuan's face was flushed red, and he said hatefully, Ji Wuxiang's power is not something you can compare to. Qi Yu, you are an ancient person. Instead of lying in your grave, you actually came out to stir up trouble. You are courting death. As for my cultivation, there's no harm in telling you. I'm already at the late stage of the Martial King realm, and it won't be long before I break through to the Martial Emperor realm. Tang Zheng's heart trembled, and his expression changed slightly. He had not guessed wrongly. The leap in strength of a martial artist was indeed an eye-opener. In the past, martial artists had always been suppressed by cultivators. The speed at which the strength of cultivators soared far surpassed that of martial artists. That was why they became so powerful, causing martial artists to be unable to raise their heads. But now it's different. The cultivation speed of martial artists is not the slightest bit slower than you martial artists. This is all thanks to the Lord. All the martial artists in the world will be grateful for his kindness. Tang Jing seemed to be able to understand Long Xuanyuan's excitement. After all, this was the feeling of being able to hold one's head high. Tang Zheng was not moved, and said indifferently, "I will kill Ji Wuxiang and let you all understand the true difference between cultivators and martial artists. That is just your beautiful, extravagant hope. Reality is much crueler than you think. If you want to kill me, then come. I will not give in. No martial artist will give in to you cultivators." Long Xianyuan puffed out his chest and said loudly. Tang Zheng did not waste any more words. With a grab of his hand, another tornado that was like an angry dragon appeared. The air from all directions gathered towards his palm. The tornado quickly flew towards Long Xianyuan. Long Xianyuan shook his spear. There were no fancy moves, no spear flowers, only the cold light of the spear pierced towards the tornado. This move of returning to one's original state was an extremely difficult realm for martial artists to reach. However, Long Xianyuan was no longer the same as before, and this move was extremely skillful. In the blink of an eye, the spear left his hand and pierced into the tornado. In an instant, the spear split into two into four, and actually turned into many, stirring up the tornado. Boom! The tornado disappeared, and the spear stopped in midair. The wind was calm, as if the spear had won. The corner of Tang Zheng's mouth curled up into an unfathomable smile. With a flick of his finger, a strong wind blew against the spear. Ka-ka-ka! The spear cracked inch by inch and turned into fine powder. It drifted away with the wind and disappeared without a trace. Long Xianyuan spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as a sheet. His breathing was chaotic as he coughed non-stop. "Now you know who's stronger," Tang Zheng said indifferently. Long Xianyuan said, "So what if you're strong? If you're unpopular, the final victor will definitely belong to the Lord." Does Ji Wuxiang have the support of the people? In this world, whoever has the biggest fist is the truth. Tang Zheng raised his fist and said fiercely. However, Long Xianyuan raised his head high. These words did not convince him. "I don't need to convince you. Those who don't believe in these words will eventually be eliminated. It's only a matter of time." After Tang Zheng finished speaking, he grabbed with his hand and sucked Long Xianyuan into his hand. Long Xianyuan didn't even have the chance to cry out before his neck was grabbed by Tang Zheng. He really wanted to use the soul-searching technique so that the secrets in Long Xianyuan's brain would be exposed. However, this might turn Long Xianyuan into an idiot. After all, he was Nana's grandfather, and Tang Zheng didn't want to do such a thing. He rolled his eyes and had an idea. He smiled evilly and said, "Tell Ji Wuxiang that I won't let him and the people around him off. I will kill them one by one and let them know how powerful I, Qiyu, am. This world will belong to me, Qiyu, alone." He loosened his grip and sent it forward again. With a bang, he slapped Long Xianyuan's chest. True qi flowed through his 8 extraordinary meridians towards his dantian. Boom! Chapter 1410. Long Xianyuan was stunned, as if he didn't understand what was going on. But he immediately came to a realization. His dantian had collapsed. For a martial artist, this was equivalent to taking his life. Long Xianyuan had been practicing martial arts since he was young, and had been practicing martial arts for most of his life. Martial arts was an indispensable part of his life. Martial arts gave him glory, dignity, and power. In fact, everything he had was closely related to martial arts. But now that his dantian had shattered, from today onwards, his martial arts would no longer exist. He was in despair. 2 huge tears flowed out of his eyes, and then, the tears formed a line and fell down like raindrops. Tang Zheng looked at this scene without the slightest bit of guilt. Long Xianyuan was his enemy. If Long Xianyuan had the chance to kill him, he would definitely not be lenient. If it weren't for Mu Hongyan and Nana, he wouldn't have been merciful. Therefore, he was already very merciful. Long Xianyuan, isn't this feeling very bad? That's right, this is the result of going against me, Qiyu. I want you to live a life worse than death. Tang Zheng deliberately laughed wildly. He was now Qiyu, so of course he couldn't comfort him. Instead, he had to do his best to attack him and humiliate him. Only in this way would he have the motivation to live on. Otherwise, he might not be able to survive this heavy blow. Long Xianyuan didn't know about Tang Zheng's good intentions. He only glared at him fiercely, his eyes bloodshot, and said while gnashing his teeth, "Qi Yu, you're so ruthless." Tang Zheng deliberately laughed. "Hate me? Then hate me, but unfortunately, you will never have the chance to take revenge. Obediently report to your master, Ji Wuxiang, and then you will have completed your destiny. At that time, you can die." This was like a heavy hammer that ruthlessly struck his heart. Just now, he felt like he was better off dead. But now, he suddenly felt lucky that he was not dead. Otherwise, wouldn't he have fulfilled Qi Yu's wish? "I can't die, I have to live on. Although I am no longer a warrior, I want to see the day when Qi Yu is defeated by the High Lord. I want to see his destruction." Long Xianyuan silently made up his mind. He didn't have the slightest thought of dying. Tang Zheng saw him gnashing his teeth and guessed what he was thinking. Instantly, he relaxed in his heart. He had done all he could, and if he still wanted to die, then he couldn't blame himself. There was no need to stay here any longer. He looked at Long Xianyuan coldly and laughed arrogantly. "Tell Ji Wuxiang, it's useless for him to be a coward. I will catch him even if I have to dig 3 feet into the ground. I will kill all of you warriors." After he finished speaking, he slowly rose into the air. He did not put these people in his eyes at all. He was extremely arrogant. He disappeared in mid-air, and the pressure suddenly disappeared. However, the boulder that was pressing on their hearts did not weaken at all. Long Xianyuan staggered out. Some of his subordinates came to help him, but he was pushed away. However, he staggered and almost fell to the ground. His hair was disheveled and he was in a sorry state. In this short period of time, he seemed to have aged 10 years, which made people sigh. Everyone's expression was complicated. Their eyes were focused on him, and their hearts were filled with Qi Yen. At the same time, they had the same thought in their hearts. They were not so carefree and aloof. Cultivators were more powerful than they thought. Once they made a move, it was possible for them to live a life worse than death. Long Xianyuan appeared in a secret place and confirmed that no one was following him. Grandma Li looked at him in surprise. She wanted to reach out to help him, but subconsciously stopped. She anxiously asked, "What happened to you?" Long Xianyuan's mouth hung helplessly and said weakly, "My danton was destroyed." Grandma Li was shocked. Although she saw that there was no star power in his body and subconsciously stopped, she did not expect his dantian to be destroyed. As a martial artist, she knew very well what this meant. Her expression immediately became gloomy, and she asked sternly, "Who did it?" Long Xianyuan took a deep breath and said the name. "Qi Yu." "Qi Yu?" Grandma Li exclaimed. Her voice was sharp and she was greatly shocked. Long Xianyuan looked at her expression and did not say a word. He let her accept this incredible news by herself. After a long while, Grandma Li woke up from her dream and asked, "Qi Yu came to Dianan? Then where is he now?" Grandma Li asked. Long Xianyuan shook his head. "I don't know. His target is the Lord. He wants me to give up the Lord. How can I tell him? He destroyed me. I want to see the Lord kill him." His words were full of hatred. Grandma Li could understand him, nodded and said, "You did the right thing. The Lord will kill him to avenge you." Long Xianyuan nodded heavily, slightly hesitated and said, "Where is the Lord? I want to see him." Grandma Li hesitated for a moment and said, "The Lord went out to do something and has not returned yet." Long Xianyuan lowered his head in disappointment and said weakly, "If the Lord comes back, please let him see me." "Of course. Then I'll take my leave first." Long Xianyuan bade farewell, turned around and walked out like an old man on his deathbed. In the past, he had a divine power and was full of spirit, more powerful than young people. Now that he had no power, he was like an old man, even slightly inferior. Watching Long Xianyuan walk away, Grandma Li's eyes gradually became cold. If Long Xianyuan saw this look, he would understand more. Granny Li came to a more secretive place and said respectfully, "My lord, I let Long Xianyuan go." In the darkness, Ji Wuxiang walked out, expressionless, and no one could see his heart. He nodded slightly and said indifferently, I already know. Chiyu came to Dianan and directly challenged me. Grandma Li said angrily, Chiyu went too far, daring to come to Dianan. We can't let him go on like this. Ji Wuxiang didn't answer and muttered, Chiyu, why did you destroy Long Xuanyuan's dantian? Grandma Li was stunned. She didn't understand why the Lord was entangled with this question. She said naturally, this is more cruel than killing a martial artist. Of course it is to torture him. Ji Wuxiang didn't speak. Grandma Li's heart trembled, realizing that things were far from as simple as she thought. Her expression became dignified, and she asked nervously, Lord, is there a problem? The Lord pondered for a long time. His calm expression didn't reveal his thoughts. The atmosphere was so quiet and oppressive that Grandma Li's breathing couldn't help but quicken. If it was someone else, they would have been scared to the ground. Only Grandma Li could hold on. Chapter 14:11. Granny Li suspiciously looked at the mysterious smile on Ji Wuxiang's face and asked curiously, My lord, is there really a problem? Ji Wuxiang looked at Granny Li with a smile that was not a smile and said, Don't you think that Chiyu's behavior is very strange? Strange? Granny Li was at a loss. When did Chiyu become so benevolent? Is he benevolent? Granny Li was in disbelief. He destroyed Long Xuanyuan's dantian, which is crueler than killing him. Where is the benevolence? Ji Wuxiang chuckled and said, Is this considered cruel? Let me tell you, the most miserable person is killing someone. As long as one's life is left, there is a chance to make a comeback. Chiyu should understand this principle. If Chiyu heard this, he would definitely give a thumbs up and praise Ji Wuxiang for understanding him. Killing a person is the most effective way to strike, but also the cruelest way, crueler than any other method. Granny Li thought for a while and had to admit that Ji Wuxiang's words were reasonable. Suddenly, a question arose in her heart. Since Chiyu knows this principle, why didn't he kill Long Xuanyuan? Ji Wuxiang laughed and said meaningfully, This is where Chiyu's cleverness lies. Killing Long Xuanyuan is indeed a counterattack, but that's just child's play. Only this way is more in line with his identity. He is confident that he is the strongest person in the world, so he used this method to tell me that he is not afraid of any revenge. Even if Long Xuanyuan can make a comeback, he will not put him in his eyes. After a pause, Ji Wuxiang took a deep breath and said, This is the method of a proud person. If you judge with common sense, there is no way to understand his deep meaning. Granny Li suddenly realized and said angrily, Not only is he counterattacking, he is also insulting us. He does not put us in his eyes at all. Ji Wuxiang nodded in relief. It's good that you understand this point. An arrogant army is bound to be defeated. Chiyu is bound to lose. His death date is not far away. Granny Li hatefully said. Ji Wuxiang shook his head. Wrong. An arrogant army is bound to be defeated. That is for those without strength. If one is strong enough, no matter how arrogant they will definitely win. Granny Li was stunned. She seemed to be shocked by Ji Wuxiang's theory, but after thinking about it carefully, she found that it was indeed the case. A person who was extremely powerful, no matter how arrogant he was, would never be defeated by his enemies. This was because in front of absolute power, everything else was worthless. She hesitated for a moment before saying, But has Chiyu really reached that level? Ji Wuxiang smiled. He thinks he's done it. How arrogant! This word was used very well, perfectly explaining Ji Wuxiang's point of view. Granny Li naturally understood and smiled as if relieved of a burden. Lord has heavenly chess, his power is boundless. Chiyu thinks he is invincible, but he is really stupid. He will definitely be defeated by Lord. Ji Wuxiang declined to comment and said, Chiyu came with great momentum, he will not let this matter go. He will definitely take action. Send someone down and find his whereabouts. I want to properly deal with him. Granny Li's eyes lit up. She clenched her teeth, looking forward to Lord's display of power. Ever since Ji Wuxiang had completely transformed and achieved great success, she had never seen him take action. The battle between him and Qi Yu was bound to be earth-shattering. This battle would also determine the situation of the world. When this battle ended, the victory and defeat of the world would be determined. If Tang Zheng knew about Ji Wuxiang's analysis, he would definitely be dumbfounded. He did not have such complicated thoughts. It was only because of Mu Hongyan and Nana that he let Long Xinyuan live. This was simply an unexpected surprise. It was like a sharp steel needle piercing into Ji Wuxiang's heart. Ji Wuxiang was also an absolutely proud person. He would not allow the existence of another proud person. This was a provocation to him. He would not tolerate it. After Tang Jing flew into the sky, he saw Long Xinyuan sneakily leaving the manor. He chased him all the way, but he did not expect to be shaken off. After all, he was not a local snake and was not familiar with Dianan. Long Xinyuan had lived here all his life, like a fish in water. Even if he did not have martial arts, he was like a slippery loach. Tang Zheng was not discouraged. After searching for a long time, he finally found Long Xinyuan. Seeing that he was dejected, it was as if his spirit had been sucked away. Long Xinyuan walked in the direction of his home. Tang Zheng did not chase after him. Instead, he looked around and pondered, Ji Wuxiang's lair must be in this area. Long Xinyuan went there just now, but he hid it too well. Although he could be sure of this, it was not easy to find Ji Wuxiang in the vast sea of people. The ancients had a method called waiting for rabbits to appear. Although some people call it a stupid method, it is often more reliable. He believed that Long Xinyuan was not the only one in the Azure Dragon Palace, and he was definitely not the only one who came in and out of this place. Therefore, if he waited quietly here, he would be able to see other people coming in and out. Following the vine to find the melon, he would naturally be able to track Ji Wuxiang. Ji Wuxiang was definitely unfathomable, but he also wanted to test his depth and find out how he used the celestial chest to transform the power of the stars. He didn't have to wait too long before he saw a familiar face. It was Granny Li. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. Granny Li had a deep grudge with him. Back then, during the chaos of the martial sect, Wu Junshan had to leave the martial sect because of Granny Li. Tang Zheng was Wu Junshan's son, so naturally he would not forget this matter. Granny Li did not discover Tang Zheng, who had used an illusion to hide his whereabouts. Instead, she quickly walked out. She was going to supervise her subordinates to search for Qi Yu's whereabouts. If it was something else, a phone call would be enough. But this matter was of great importance, so she had to personally supervise to prevent any accidents. As Granny Li walked, the corner of her eyes scanned the surroundings. She was very vigilant. Qi Yu was in Dianan, and the possibility of encountering him could not be ruled out. No matter how arrogant and conceited Granny Li was, she knew that Qi Yu was not an ordinary person. If she encountered him, she would not be able to gain any advantage. Finally, she came to a stronghold. Dianan was completely infiltrated by the Azure Dragon Palace. Dozens of strongholds were set up, and many martial experts were hidden in each stronghold. These martial artists did not have any other activities except for cultivation. Naturally, the speed of their improvement was self-evident. However, when Tang Jing stepped into this stronghold, his expression immediately changed. The aura of this place was completely different from other places. Moreover, there was an invisible energy lingering in the air. If he did not come close, he would not have noticed it. The power of the stars. Tang Jing immediately saw the clue. This energy was actually the power of the stars. The power of the stars slowly flowed towards the stronghold. Obviously, someone was absorbing it. His heart lit up as he suddenly realized, martial artists are absorbing the power of the stars while cultivating, but they have no way to directly absorb the power of the stars from the ninth heaven. They have to do it this way. This was like a water supply system. People did not directly draw water from rivers, but through waterworks. The water in the air was like the reservoir of a waterworks, continuously supplying the users. Tang Zheng was overjoyed. This meant that the warriors were not as strong as he thought. They could not directly absorb the power of the stars from the nine heavens, so they could only rely on this method. If they did not have the power of the stars to replenish themselves, then they would not be able to continue increasing their cultivation. This was worse than the situation of martial artists in the past. In the past, martial artists could continuously cultivate, and their inner strength was produced from the inside out without the help of the outside world. But now it was completely different. His heart trembled as he thought of another point. Although martial artists nowadays had improved their cultivation, they had to rely on Ji Wuxiang. Without Ji Wuxiang's continuous supply of the power of the stars, they could not cultivate at all. Therefore, once they had tasted the sweetness, they could never leave Ji Wuxiang. This was more effective than any drug control. For martial artists, they knew that they could continue to cultivate and become more powerful, but their path was cut off. This was worse than killing them. Therefore, they would always pledge their allegiance to Ji Wuxiang. Brilliant, really brilliant. Tang Jing secretly cursed. He had to admit that Ji Wuxiang's method was brilliant. Granny Li had already entered the stronghold and disappeared. After a while, she came out again. Apparently, she had arranged everything and was ready to go to the next stronghold. Tang Jing guessed her purpose, but he did not chase after her. He had figured out the characteristics of the strongholds, which were the power of the stars. Perhaps others would ignore the power of the stars, but he would not. In that case, he would uproot all of Ji Wuxiang's strongholds. This account would naturally be on Qi Yu's head. He did not believe that Ji Wuxiang would be able to hold back. He would definitely be furious and would not give up until he fought with Qi Yu to the death. He took a step forward and quietly appeared in the stronghold, instantly attracting countless gazes. The cultivators immediately realized that these newcomers had ill intentions and attacked without hesitation. Their attacks were clean and efficient, and their killing intent soared. A few minutes later, Tang Jing walked out of the stronghold. With a rumble, the stronghold collapsed. As for the martial artists inside, they all died. In order to end the battle quickly, Tang Jing did not hold back at all and directly used the heaven-devouring technique. All the martial artists were sucked into the black hole and turned into wisps of vitality in the heavenly realm. He also used the soul-searching technique, but did not find anything useful. They still did not know the secret of Ji Wuxiang's transformation of martial artists. They also did not know anything about the Azure Dragon Hall's headquarters. Usually, it was Granny Li who came to find them. This was a one-way communication, so Tang Jing could not find anything. Ji Wuxiang, you cunning fox. You really have taken every conceivable possibility into account. So strong. He raised his head and found the power of the stars still hovering in the air. The corners of his mouth curled up. Wasn't this a free gift? How could he let it go? With a wave of his hand, the power of the stars poured down like a flood and he absorbed it into his body. Then he wandered around southern Yunnan. As long as the power of the stars was detected, almost all the martial artists were in trouble. Chapter 1412. Almost all of the strongholds had been destroyed. These cultivators had been recruited by Ji Wuxiang with great difficulty, and there was no lack of notorious bandits among them who had committed heinous crimes. However, Ji Wuxiang didn't care about them. As long as they could be used by him and work for him, he would welcome them with open arms. In fact, only this group of desperados would be willing to serve him without hesitation and kill everywhere. In the end, the matter was exposed. There was a small accident during a surprise attack. A cultivator dialed Granny Li's number, but before he could say a word, he was sucked into a black hole. But it had already been exposed, so how could someone as smart as Granny Li not know that there was a problem? She hurriedly called several bases, but there was no reply. Her face turned gloomy in an instant. She immediately returned to a stronghold as fast as she could, only to find that it had become a pile of rubble. There was no sign of a single cultivator. They're all gone. She was dumbfounded. After a long time, she finally recovered and flew into a rage. It must be Qi Yu. Besides him, who else would do this? She clenched her teeth and said firmly, I was trying my best to find him, but it turns out that he has already launched an attack on my Azure Dragon Hall. Suddenly, her eyes turned and she exclaimed, That's not right. Why were these strongholds not attacked when I came here? Qi Yu, seems to be following my footsteps. She was smart and immediately understood. She regretted it. He was following me. I was leading the way for him, allowing him to find one stronghold after another. This cruel reality almost drove her crazy. The Azure Dragon Hall had gathered a little bit of wealth with great difficulty, but because of her negligence, it was almost all ruined. It was ridiculous that she had been so determined to catch Chiyu. This was a great irony. "Chiyu, where are you? Come out for this old lady." She roared to the sky, her eyes almost spitting fire as she looked around fiercely. At this moment, she wished she could cut Chiyu into pieces and eat him alive. "You're looking for me?" Suddenly, a voice floated into her ears. Granny Lee turned around abruptly. She was shocked, but her eyes immediately locked onto the young face not far away. It was Song Yu's body and Chiyu's soul. "Chiyu, you finally showed up." Granny Lee clenched her teeth and said fiercely, "You called me so urgently. If I didn't come, wouldn't you be disappointed?" Tang Jing said with a fake smile. Granny Lee glared at him and said, "I was very disappointed that I couldn't kill you with my own hands. Now, I'm not disappointed anymore. With the High Lord's protection, I can finally see you. I can kill you with my own hands. There's no need for the High Lord to do anything." Tang Jing remained unmoved and said indifferently, "You're so confident. Do you really think you can easily kill me? This is Dianan, not your territory. You don't know how powerful Dianan is," Granny Lee said. "Is that so? Then I'd like to see how powerful Dianan is," Tang Jing said with a smile that was not a smile. In order to avoid wasting time, Tang Jing decided to make the first move to gain the upper hand and directly launched an attack. He pressed his hands into the air, and a gust of wind blew and black clouds rolled, immediately trapping Granny Lee. Granny Lee's eyes turned cold as she put away her contempt. She understood that her situation was not as optimistic as she thought it would be. But she would not give up. A cold light flashed in her hand, and the crutch she had been using flew up. A cold light gathered, exuding a terrifying aura. Tang Jing looked at her curiously, analyzing her strength compared to before. He had to admit that Granny Lee's posture was very powerful. Anyone with a slightly guilty conscience would be directly scared away by this momentum. Killing is not just a matter of having an imposing aura. Tang Jing curled his lips and his 10 fingers contracted inward, forming a claw. The gust of wind and black clouds contracted inward, and an invisible pressure directly pressed down on Granny Lee, as if to flatten and crush her. This was just an appetizer, and Tang Jing did not use his full strength. Granny Lee knew the strength of the enemy, so instead, she used her strongest strength to counterattack or kill him in one blow. However, her thinking was too simple. Granny Lee's cultivation was higher than Ji Wuxiang's. She had reached the martial king realm before, and after Ji Wuxiang's transformation, she soared to the sky and directly broke through to the martial emperor realm. From this, it could be seen how powerful her strength was and how terrifying her attacks were. She pointed her crutch forward, and the power of the stars poured out like a flood, hitting the gust of wind and black clouds. It shattered, and the wind swept away the clouds, disappearing without a trace. Gotcha! A crack appeared on the crutch, but the crack did not expand. Granny Lee's pupils shrank as she finally realized that she was an opponent of the enemy. Her face immediately changed, and the light on her crutch increased greatly, like a blazing sun. This was a phenomenon caused by the light of the star power. The light was blazing, and wherever it passed, the air seemed to be scorched. The heat boiled and the heat waves rolled. It was a pity that people who had experienced the damage caused by the soul of the Golden Crow were not afraid of this little bit of damage. It could not even be considered as a scratch. Tang Jing stepped forward and directly arrived outside of Granny Lee's stroll. He sneered and said, "Is this all you've got? The warrior transformed by Ji Wuxiang is only SOSO, and you still want to fight against me? You're really wishful thinking." How could Granny Lee admit defeat? She stared hatefully at Tang Jing and said, "Chiyu, so what if I fight against you? The strength of the warrior transformed by the High Lord is not something you can guess." "Is that so? Strong?" "Hee hee, I didn't see the slightest clue. If the warrior was strong, why was it that I wiped out all of them and no one was able to compete with me? Tang Jing snorted and asked with a sneer. Granny Li's cheeks flushed red. This was a clean slap to her face, causing her to lose face. She angrily said, "You used despicable means to track me down and harm them." Despicable means? Tang Jing laughed. You really think too highly of yourself. I didn't need to track you down to find them. How did you find them? Granny Li asked incredulously. The implication was that the stronghold was hidden so well, so how could it be found by Tang Jing? Because I know your secret, your weakness. Tang Jing said firmly. Granny Li's face changed slightly, and her heart was nervous. This was their secret, so how did he know about their weakness? If she knew that this was just Tang Jing's speculation, she would definitely be taken aback. Of course, she would not admit it. She deliberately said in a disdainful tone, "Qi Yu, keep dreaming. You still want to find out our secret?" Tang Jing smiled gently and said, "Do you really think so? Hee, then I'll reveal the riddle now." Humph, what riddle? Don't think too highly of yourself. Granny Li snorted. Chapter 1413. When Granny Li heard this, she was dumbfounded. Her eyes were as big as a cow's. She stammered, How did you know?" Tang Jing laughed. "Is it that hard to see?" Granny Li was startled. Only then did she realize who she was talking to. He was Qi Yu, a legendary figure, so it was not impossible for him to see through this. This was indeed the shortcoming of a cultivator. If anyone could absorb star force from the ninth heaven, their cultivation speed would be greatly improved. Granny Li had also asked Ji Wuxiang this question: could a cultivator directly absorb star force from the ninth heaven? Ji Wuxiang did not answer directly. Granny Li understood and did not ask again, but as smart as she was, she immediately thought of another possibility. The High Lord might have a way to overcome this shortcoming, or rather, this shortcoming was deliberately created by him, because in this way, cultivators could not escape from his control. However, Granny Li did not dare to voice her guess and could only bury it deep in her heart. Seeing Granny Li speechless, Tang Jing sneered, "This is what you think you can rely on. It's like walking with only one leg, you can't go far. Humph, you want to beat us? You're delusional." After a slight pause, he continued, "Today, I'll let you know what a gap is, a gap as wide as a chasm." Granny Li was shocked and quickly raised her head, staring at the other party in horror. In a flash, Tang Jing had already rushed towards her, his big hand grabbing at Granny Li, and a gust of wind swept her up. Granny Li did not struggle, but circulated her cultivation, causing star force to flow out of her body and spread out like a sharp knife, tearing the wind apart. She waved her hand and the walking stick flew up as well. It kept spinning, and in an instant, the wind was torn to pieces. There was already a crack on the crutch, and after such a fierce attack, with a crack, spiderweb-like cracks spread all over the crutch. Granny Li stared blankly as her weapon was completely destroyed, turning into pieces that drifted away with the wind. At the same time, Tang Jing took a big stride forward, completely closing the distance between them and arriving in front of her. His big hand reached out to grab Granny Li. Granny Li retreated in a panic as a sharp star force appeared in front of her. This star force was like a sharp blade, attacking Tang Jing with an unstoppable momentum. The corners of Tang Jing's mouth curled up in a mysterious smile. A black hole suddenly appeared in his palm, disintegrating the fierce star power in an instant, and a huge attractive force pulled Granny Li in. Granny Li's face suddenly changed. She stared at the black hole in front of her in horror and shouted, You are not Qi Yu." This black hole was too familiar. It was like a symbol, and as long as one saw it, they would never forget it. This was the sky-swallowing technique that Tang Jing was famous for, a technique that the devil race had once dismissed as useless. However, in the hands of Tang Jing, it was the sky-swallowing technique. "You are Tang Jing?" Granny Li screamed in disbelief. Tang Jing smiled indifferently, "It's too late for you to know now." Since he had openly displayed the sky-swallowing technique, he naturally had nothing to fear. Or rather, he had no intention of letting Granny Lee go. Granny Lee also thought of this and felt a chill in her heart, but then she suddenly realized, so it was you who pretended to be Chi-Yu and stirred up trouble in Dianan. You wanted to provoke the conflict between the Lord and Chi-Yu so that they would kill each other, so that you could sit back and reap the benefits. Tang Zheng did not deny it and said, you guessed right, but even if I didn't provoke them, they are still mortal enemies. I just poured a little oil on the fire. You are so ruthless, Granny Lee said through gritted teeth. Ruthless? Tang Zheng laughed. Granny Lee, are you qualified to say this? You are 1,000 times more ruthless than me. Granny Lee was startled and speechless, but her heart was in her throat. She secretly made up her mind that she must pass this message to the Lord, lest he be used. But in the current situation, how could she pass the message back? Her only hope was to survive. Delay. Once the Lord found out something was wrong, he would definitely come to rescue her. At that time, Tang Zheng would definitely not be the Lord's opponent. She could even capture him directly and turn the tables. Seeing her expression fluctuating and silent, Tang Zheng jokingly said, you want to delay time and wait for reinforcements, right? Do. Granny Lee was stunned. She was immediately seen through by Tang Zheng. Seeing her reaction, Tang Zheng became more and more certain of his guess and said, unfortunately, you made the wrong decision. Granny Lee, today is the day you die. As for why you want to die, I don't need to repeat the reason. Granny Lee certainly knew the reason. There was no need to say more. The two sides were mortal enemies. If you don't die, I will live. If you kill me, the Lord will definitely take revenge. Whether it is you or the people around you, they will all die and be buried with me. Granny Lee threatened. Tang Zheng laughed. Unfortunately, Ji Wuxiang doesn't know that I killed you. Do. Granny Lee was speechless again. Tang Zheng was right. Ji Wuxiang would only think that Chi-Yu killed her and put the blame on Chi-Yu. You really are a good schemer. Granny Lee gnashed her teeth. Tang Zheng smiled and said, you flatter me. I learned this from you. Granny Lee was speechless. Both sides were scheming against each other, but this time, Tang Zheng won. Don't try to delay time. Just go in peace. Tang Zheng's eyes flashed coldly as he stared fiercely at Granny Lee. With a thought, the suction force of the black hole increased greatly. Granny Lee struggled desperately, but it was useless. Although she was a martial emperor, there was still a world of difference between her and Tang Zheng's Mahayana realm. Ah! She screamed in despair as she was sucked into Tang Zheng's hand by the black hole. In a flash, Tang Zheng's big hand clasped her head. You're going to use the soul-searching technique. Granny Lee screamed. She obviously had a good understanding of Tang Zheng's divine powers and recognized it at a glance. She knew what kind of divine powers the soul-searching technique was. All her secrets would be exposed. Not only would she die, but even her last remaining value would be squeezed out. She was unwilling, but there was nothing she could do. She wanted to commit suicide, but she was completely under Tang Zheng's control. She couldn't even kill herself. Tang Zheng knew that these people were desperados. At the last moment, they were willing to sacrifice themselves in order to keep their secrets. So, he quickly used the soul-searching technique. Now that his power had increased greatly, the power of the soul-searching technique naturally rose as well. Ah! She screamed at the top of her lungs. Her eyes turned white and she became demented. With her cultivation as a martial emperor, if Tang Zheng used the soul-searching technique in the past, although he could find the information he wanted, he would never be able to make her demented. But now, it was different. The after-effects of the soul-searching technique had increased with his cultivation. In a flash, Tang Zheng released his hand. His eyes were shining, and the corners of his mouth raised into a satisfied smile. Hee, Ji Wuxiang, your secret is hidden very deeply. So many warriors don't know about it, but you didn't hide it from Granny Lee. Now I know your secret, Tang Zheng muttered to himself. If Ji Wuxiang heard this, he would definitely regret it. The most important secret should be known by himself. He couldn't even tell his closest subordinates. Otherwise, there would be a risk of it being leaked. But there was no medicine for regret in the world. His secret had been leaked. It turns out to be so easy to transform warriors. No wonder he could transform so many warriors in such a short time. However, Ji Wuxiang is really smart. He deliberately left a shortcoming so that he can firmly control the warriors under him. They have to rely on him to absorb the power of the stars. In fact, this shortcoming was deliberately created by Ji Wuxiang. It can be completely overcome. It turned out that as long as a warrior was transformed, they could directly absorb the power of the stars from the ninth heaven. There was no need to absorb it indirectly. But this was obviously not in line with Ji Wuxiang's demands and goals. Tang Zheng couldn't help but sigh. Ji Wuxiang was really good at controlling others. Ji Wuxiang, I'll let you experience a saying. Success is due to the same person, failure is also due to the same person. You relied on the power of the stars to win over so many warriors, so I will also use the power of the stars to counter you. I will make you betray your friends and family and become a loner. Tang Zheng suddenly had a brainwave and thought of a countermeasure. He lowered his head and glanced at Granny Li. She had become a useless person. Except for the power of the stars, she had no other use. Tang Zheng naturally wouldn't waste it. With a thought, the power of the stars was continuously absorbed into his body. Then, the black hole flashed and Granny Li disappeared, turning into a wisp of vitality in the heavenly realm. He would not leave Granny Li's body to Ji Wuxiang. How smart was Ji Wuxiang? If he saw some clues, then everything he had done would be in vain. He quietly retreated and didn't act again. Although there were other strongholds in Dianan, he was not allowed to act anymore. Even Granny Li noticed the abnormality. Ji Wuxiang would soon be aware of this. To avoid exposing his true identity, he had to hide. Now it was time to watch a good show. Ji Wuxiang did know that there was an accident in the stronghold. He immediately guessed that it was Qiyu. He immediately contacted Granny Li, but couldn't get in touch with her. He was shocked and his face was gloomy. He had realized the seriousness of the problem. Then, several pieces of news gathered in his hands. They were all about the stronghold being uprooted. Even the corpses were not left behind. He, who was usually unable to control his emotions, also felt the anger in his heart soar. He realized that the severity of the matter was far beyond his imagination. Qiyu, you've gone too far. His eyes were cold as if he wanted to eat someone. His figure flashed like a gust of wind blowing through Dianan. Wherever he passed, no one could see his whereabouts. He went from one stronghold to another but didn't find any clues. Finally, he stopped in front of a stronghold. His eyes were like torches as he said coldly, "Granny Li went missing here. No, she's dead." He didn't believe that Granny Li had a chance to survive in Qiyu's hands. Like the other warriors, she must have died a long time ago. If other warriors died, he wouldn't be shocked. They were all pawns that could be replaced by others. Chapter 14:14. There was no wind, but the gravel still flew up. With Ji Wuxiang as the center, countless strands of qi rose from the ground and danced around him. He closed his eyes, but it was clearer than when he opened them. The qi affected the gravel, like angry dragons, circling around Ji Wuxiang. The qi was sharp and powerful. After an unknown amount of time. Chapter 14:15. Ji Wuxiang closed his eyes and seemed to be asleep, but every trace of change could not escape his discerning eyes. Imperceptibly, he understood everything in his heart. Closing his eyes was better than opening thousands of eyes. In Dianan, every person and every object, whether living or dead, formed a vague shadow in his mind. Chapter 14:16. Could it be that Qiyu had some kind of supernatural power that could restrain the power of the stars? He stared at Qiyu with a burning gaze, but he couldn't figure out the truth even after a long time. Tang Zheng had already seen some clues from Ji Wuxiang's reaction. Ji Wuxiang was a smart person, so it was easy for him to figure out the problem. Chapter 1417. Ji Wuxiang looked at Tang Jing in disbelief, completely unable to understand why the damage caused by the power of the stars was so small. Could it be that Qi Yu had some kind of divine ability that could restrain the power of the stars? He stared at Qi Yu with a burning gaze, unable to see through it for a long time. Tang Jing had already seen some clues from Ji Wuxiang's reaction. Ji Wuxiang was a smart person and could easily see through the problem. In order to avoid being exposed, Tang Jing hurriedly tried to salvage the situation. Ji Wuxiang, my 9 Li tribe has thousands of divine abilities. If you want to deal with me with this little trick of yours, you're really thinking too simply. Ji Wuxiang's eyes narrowed slightly like slits. What kind of divine ability can break through the power of the stars? Tang Jing pretended to be profound as he laughed, but did not reply. Ji Wuxiang understood that he could not find an answer. Then he could only continue to attack. The power of the celestial chess was far more than this. With a thought, the power of the stars also changed and gathered together, finally condensing into a large blade. The blade fiercely fell down with an imposing aura, causing people's hearts to tremble in fear. Tang Jing's pupils shrank slightly as he stared straight at the large blade. He could clearly feel the power of the large blade condensed from starlight. Where the blade pointed, it was invincible. Tang Jing hurriedly urged his power. His hands were suffused with a dazzling light, like 2 balls of flames. As the large blade fell, Tang Jing's hands tightly clamped the blade. 2 rays of light were like dazzling sparks, splashing in all directions. These specks of light floated in this space like stars twinkling in the vast Milky Way. Ji Wuxiang's eyes flashed with a hint of fierceness as he shouted, "Cut the galaxy!" The light of the large blade increased greatly. In an instant, it turned into a large blade and suddenly sank down. The galaxy flowed. Tang Jing's hands subconsciously loosened, and the blade fell from between his hands, landing on the galaxy. The river of stars was torn apart and collapsed. The starlight shot in all directions like arrows. Tang Jing was injured by the sharp blade, and blood flowed out. However, before the blood could drip down from Tang Jing's palm, it froze. Tang Jing's expression was solemn. He pushed his hand forward and a wall of wind appeared in front of him. Bang bang bang. The starlight was blocked by the wind wall, and the sound of collision was continuous, like a series of thunderclaps. Kacha! Cracks appeared on the wind wall, and it quickly collapsed. The starry broadsword's momentum was like a rainbow as it quickly followed up and attacked Tang Jing. Tang Jing had nowhere to run, but he couldn't unleash any of his powerful divine abilities. Seeing that Dadao was already in front of him, Tang Jing stared at Dadao with burning eyes. The saber was condensed from the power of the stars, and its might was immense. Facing it, ordinary people would have no other choice but to face it head-on. However, Tang Jing was not an ordinary person. He understood too much about the power of the stars. Therefore, his eyes suddenly lit up as he discovered something unusual about the broadsword. No one else would notice this. However, it was discovered by Tang Jing with his sharp senses. The starry broadsword relied on the heavenly chest to continuously provide energy. If the heavenly chest was disrupted and the energy was out of balance, then the starry broadsword would collapse on itself, and it would not be a threat at all. Could Tang Jing cause the heavenly chest to be disrupted? Of course, because he understood the heavenly chest too well. However, there was one thing he had to be careful of, and that was to not arouse Ji Wuxiang's vigilance. Ji Wuxiang knew very well that in this world, other than himself, only Tang Jing understood the heavenly chest the most. He was the one who had taught Tang Jing that in the past. With Tang Jing's intelligence, Ji Wuxiang was sure that he would definitely have a new understanding. As for how much understanding Tang Jing had of the heavenly chess, he couldn't guess at all. Coincidentally, Tang Jing also knew this, so he planned to use this to catch his opponent off guard and catch him off guard. However, at the same time, he had to avoid letting Ji Wuxiang see through his understanding of the heavenly chess. This way, he wouldn't invite trouble and let Ji Wuxiang guess his true identity. With a thought, a slight change occurred to the heavenly chess, but this change was very slight. Ji Wuxiang's entire attention was focused on Tang Jing, so he didn't even notice this change. In fact, this was the result of Ji Wuxiang's absolute confidence. He definitely didn't believe that Qiyu could control the power of the stars. When he saw the starry broadsword falling towards Tang Jing, he smiled confidently, thinking that Tang Jing was already at the end of his rope. Tang Jing didn't move. His eyes were calm, and everywhere he looked, there was only the sharp edge of the blade. However, in private, a slight change occurred to the heavenly chess, and this change was subtle. In a short while, it developed from a small part to the overall situation. Now's the time. Suddenly, Tang Jing's eyes lit up. He put his palms together, and a long sword made of essential qi suddenly appeared in his hands. The long sword slashed down. The power of this sword was beyond imagination, and it went straight for the starry broadsword. Ji Wuxiang narrowed his eyes slightly. He didn't expect that at the last moment, when the outcome was already decided, his opponent would still want to go all out. This was simply an idiot's dream. That was what Ji Wuxiang thought. You overestimate yourself. He curled his lips. Under the effect of the heavenly chess, the power of the starry broadsword had been raised to the extreme, and the pressure was very frightening. If it were an ordinary cultivator or martial artist, they would have been scared to the ground by the pressure of the starry broadsword. Tang Jing could naturally see through Ji Wuxiang's thoughts, but he was secretly delighted, because he was also fully prepared. Bang! The broadsword and the starry broadsword clashed. Ji Wuxiang's expression suddenly froze. Because the scene he expected didn't happen. His smile froze, as if he had been petrified, and he looked at the scene in front of him in disbelief. Both the broadsword and the sword shattered. The sword shattered. This was what Ji Wuxiang expected, but how could his starry broadsword shatter? The starry broadsword's aura and pressure were far more powerful than that of the long sword, so how could both be destroyed and shatter? Tang Jing was overjoyed. This counterattack was really fast and accurate, and it was too successful. The slight change in the heavenly chess was almost negligible, but it successfully took effect when the long sword hit the starry broadsword, causing the heavenly chess to be disrupted, and the power of the stars was out of balance. That starry broadsword naturally felt a decisive threat, and it was destroyed together with the long sword. When he saw Ji Wuxiang's reaction, he knew that he didn't notice anything strange. This step was too dangerous. But he still didn't have the next step. This step could ensure that Ji Wuxiang wouldn't suspect that there was a problem with the heavenly chess. Tang Jing puffed, and a trace of blood flowed out of the corner of his mouth. As if he had been hit by a heavy bomb, he flew backwards, broke a pillar, and made a big hole in the wall. He fell out of the room in a sorry state. He did this on purpose so that he could create an illusion, so that Ji Wuxiang would think that Qiyu had used all his strength and fought with all his might to shatter the starry broadsword, and not that the starry broadsword was destroyed because of some other reason. This would allow Ji Wuxiang to maintain his usual confidence and pride, and make him look down on Qiyu. This way, he would seek revenge on Qiyu in the future. Otherwise, if Qiyu broke his heavenly chess so easily, he wouldn't have the guts to seek revenge on Qiyu. This chain of events, like inviting the enemy into a trap, could completely dispel Ji Wuxiang's doubts. Chapter 14:18. Ji Wuxiang was indeed suspicious. However, when he saw Qiyu flying backwards, his eyebrows immediately rose. Humph, you dare to go against the celestial chess, you overestimate yourself. Even so, Ji Wuxiang was still shocked. This was because the strength that Qiyu had displayed had deeply shocked him. He had actually defeated the starry saber at the risk of being injured. Ji Wuxiang did not suspect that this was a problem with the celestial chess. Tang Jing stood up from the ruins outside the house, looked at Ji Wuxiang from afar, and made a decision in his heart. He saw a trace of pride in Ji Wuxiang's eyes, which meant that Ji Wuxiang did not suspect anything. His plan succeeded. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth in a sorry state, and said, "The celestial chess is indeed worthy of its reputation." As soon as he finished speaking, he shot out like a cannonball, flying into the distance. Ji Wuxiang's expression turned cold, and he shouted sternly, "Qiyu, you want to escape? You have already entered my celestial chess. Do you think it is so easy to escape? Ji Wuxiang immediately chased after him, but he was one step too slow. Tang Zheng's figure disappeared in front of his eyes. However, he was not worried. Dianan was under the control of the celestial chess, and any movement in the wind could not escape his eyes. In fact, it was so. When Ji Wuxiang activated the celestial chess, the trace of Qi Yu immediately appeared in his mind. He smiled coldly. Qi Yu, let's see where you can run to. After Tang Zheng saw the power of the celestial chess, he was also very clear about this. However, he was not afraid. Instead, he flew straight out of the city. Ji Wuxiang, you would never have dreamed that the person you are chasing is someone who knows the celestial chess very well, right? Tang Zheng laughed proudly and his feet shook. He did not fly in a straight line, but flew in a strange trajectory. Ji Wuxiang was overjoyed to see that he was getting closer and closer to Qiyu. Suddenly, his pupils constricted as he exclaimed in surprise. What happened? Did we lose track of him? They had almost reached the border of Dianan. Tang Zheng had chosen this moment to make a sudden move and evade Tianqi's detection. As long as one's cultivation was profound enough, and one had a sufficient understanding of the heavenly chess, it would not be difficult to achieve this. Tang Zheng did just that. He chose the right time and suddenly made his move, disappearing silently from the celestial chess. Ji Wuxiang didn't believe that Qiyu could disappear from the heavenly chess so mysteriously. He immediately activated the heavenly chess, wanting to continue investigating. However, after half a day, he still found nothing. The shock and despair in his eyes could not be concealed. Qiyu had really successfully escaped from the celestial chess. Ji Wuxiang had no choice but to stop. At this point, it was futile to continue searching. He frowned and racked his brains. Finally, he had a flash of inspiration. He guessed something. This is the border of southern Yunnan, which is also the border of the area controlled by the heavenly chess. Could it be that the power of the heavenly chess is weakened? That's why Qiyu was able to take advantage of it. That must be it. That's the only way to explain everything. Qiyu, you're really cunning. You managed to slip away right under my nose. However, on second thought, even a famous person like Qiyu could only run away when facing him. This was enough to show how powerful he was. He was truly superior to Qiyu. Qiyu killed so many of my men. Do you think you can escape just by running away? Humph, how is that possible? Ji Wuxiang's expression turned cold and gloomy. A debt of blood must be paid in blood. Qiyu, just you wait. I'll visit your headquarters very soon and make you pay in blood. Ji Wuxiang had made up his mind. He would go to Qiyu's headquarters and give him a fatal blow. Tang Zheng had slipped away. He had safely left southern Yunnan. He let out a long sigh of relief and calmed down. He looked in the direction of southern Yunnan from afar and muttered to himself, Ji Wuxiang, you won't suspect anything now. You'll definitely attack Qiyu. Then I'll just sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. Southern Yunnan was full of mystery at night. Especially in Tang Zheng's eyes, those chess games that were faintly discernible in the air had infinite power. He had also experienced the power of the heavenly chess. He wanted to study it more deeply. As long as he understood more about the heavenly chess, he would have more advantages in future battles. He could even decide the outcome of the battle. In addition, he already knew Ji Wuxiang's biggest secret. Once he returned, he could let the martial artists around him also have the power of the stars. Moreover, it was not the weak power of Ji Wuxiang's subordinates. They could truly absorb the power of the stars freely. Whether it was Yi Dingdang or Wu, they would all have great improvements and their strength would increase greatly. He suppressed the excitement in his heart, summoned the somersault cloud, and soared into the sky. Xiaobai came out of the Sumeru world again and stood beside Tang Zheng. He said bitterly, Master, I couldn't help you on this trip to southern Yunnan. Tang Zheng laughed and patted his head. What's there to be depressed about? There are still many battles. When the time comes, you will have the chance to show off. Xiaobai nodded. The somersault cloud carried them and flew towards the capital. However, before they could go too far, a figure swept past from afar. Its speed was faster than a plane. However, Tang Zheng and Xiao Bai's pupils shrank. They recognized that it was a person. His speed was extremely fast. He must be an expert. Both sides looked at each other. Xiao Bai said, "Master, this is an expert. I can feel his aura." Tang Zheng's expression was solemn. The other party was of course an expert. Fortunately, he was hiding in the somersault cloud. Otherwise, he would have been discovered by the other party. Such an expert appeared in the human world. He would definitely not turn a blind eye. As for whether the other party was a martial artist or a cultivator, he could not guess for the time being. This was because after transformation, martial artists could also fly. Chase. Tang Zheng immediately made a decision. Xiao Bai was eager to try. His cheeks were red with excitement and he nodded fiercely. The somersault cloud chased after the mysterious person. Both sides were extremely fast, like two rays of light. Both sides chased for an unknown period of time. The enemy in front suddenly slowed down. Tang Zheng also subconsciously slowed down. Then, a sharp sound broke through the air. Tang Zheng's pupils shrank. He saw a ray of light shoot from the hand of the person in front of him to a certain place in front of him. Tang Zheng was aghast. He saw this ray of light shoot towards a cloud. This cloud was no different from an ordinary cloud. However, in Tang Zheng's eyes, this cloud was completely different. This is not an ordinary cloud. It contains supernatural power. It is some kind of camouflage tool. His fiery eyes of truth immediately saw through it. The facts also proved his guess. When the ray of light hit the cloud, a dazzling golden light shot out from the cloud with great power. The golden light was almost blinding. However, Tang Zheng stared straight at the golden light. He was reluctant to look away for a moment. What was this? Tang Zheng had an answer in his mind. Chapter 14:19. The golden light met the attack and rumbled like a thunderbolt on a clear day. The golden light dissipated, and a crack was torn in the clouds, like a huge scar. Rays of golden light were faintly discernible in the clouds. Xiao Bai's eyes widened as he recognized the true appearance behind the clouds. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Golden Dragon, it's him!" Tang Zheng nodded with a sullen face. It's indeed the Golden Dragon. When he saw the golden light in the clouds earlier, he had already recognized the true appearance behind the clouds. Moving clouds and summoning rain was one of the dragon race's special skills. When Tang Zheng saw this unusual cloud, his heart skipped a beat. When he saw the golden light shooting out from the clouds, he no longer had any doubts. The one hiding in the clouds was the golden dragon that he knew. Back then, the golden dragon was afraid that the dragon slayer would discover its whereabouts and implicate Tang Zheng, so it resolutely left, ignoring Tang Zheng's urging to stay. Since then, although Tang Zheng had left behind the whereabouts of the golden dragon, he had no clue. He never expected to find the whereabouts of the golden dragon near southern Yunnan today. Not only that, but the golden dragon was also in a very difficult situation. It was chased by a strong man and had to use clouds as a camouflage. Tang Zheng locked onto the enemy of the golden dragon from afar. His eyes narrowed slightly like slits. "Dragon Slayer." Tang Zheng gritted his teeth and said word by word. He had almost died at the hands of the Dragon Slayer, so he naturally wouldn't forget him. The Dragon Slayer's strength was as strong as ever, especially when it came to killing the golden dragon. The golden dragon was obviously powerless. When Tang Zheng saw this scene, he could no longer sit back and ignore it. He quietly approached the Dragon Slayer. The Dragon Slayer's attention was all on the golden dragon. He had spent a lot of energy to find the golden dragon, and the other party seemed to have some way to avoid him. However, he was one step ahead. In the end, he found the golden dragon and chased it all the way. The golden dragon's strength was beyond his expectations, and it almost slipped away from his eyes. The golden dragon was right in front of him, and the dragon soul was like the most delicious delicacy, as if it was summoning a hungry man like him. He stared at the clouds with shining eyes, as if he wanted to see through the clouds and see the golden dragon in the clouds. "Die!" He let out a low roar, and like a muffled thunderclap, he attacked the golden dragon in the clouds. He was determined to win with this attack. This was his belief. The golden dragon watched helplessly as the fierce attack came at it at lightning speed. It wanted to dodge or escape. However, that strike just now had consumed a lot of his energy. Moreover, the chase had exhausted him both physically and mentally. He originally thought that he could avoid the Dragon Slayer, but he didn't expect that he would be so naive. Hope was beautiful, but reality was cruel. The Dragon Slayer was much more powerful than he had imagined. No wonder so many seniors of the Dragon Clan had died at his hands. He had wanted to avenge his clansmen, but now it seemed like it was just wishful thinking. Could it be that I can't escape the fate of the other Dragon Clan seniors? Am I going to follow in their footsteps and have my dragon soul absorbed by the Dragon Slayer? The Golden Dragon was in despair. He activated his energy again and prepared to fight for the last time. Suddenly, a cloud flew into its line of sight. The speed of this cloud was extremely fast, and it was very rare. More importantly, it was very familiar with this cloud. Somersault Cloud. He called out the cloud's name with one sentence. That means he's here. The Golden Dragon was both excited and worried. He left the capital to avoid bringing trouble to Tang Zheng. Now, Tang Zheng had taken the initiative to sacrifice himself to save him. His original plan was ruined. Of course, he didn't blame Tang Zheng. Instead, he was touched. The strength of the Dragon Slayer was something that Tang Zheng knew as well as it, but Tang Zheng could overcome the threat of death and save it without hesitation. In the eyes of the Golden Dragon, the Somersault Cloud was getting closer and closer to the Dragon Slayer, but the Dragon Slayer didn't seem to notice. A streak of cold light shot out from the Somersault Cloud like a sharp arrow, accurately attacking the Dragon Slayer. Finally, a cold light appeared in the Dragon Slayer's eyes. He didn't even turn his head and attacked with a backhand move. At the last moment, he finally noticed something. He didn't have time to turn around, so he took the opportunity to meet this sharp attack. However, when the two hands came into contact, the heaven-devouring book was immediately activated. A black hole appeared in Tang Zheng's palm. A huge suction force was like a rope, coiling around and binding the Dragon Slayer tightly. The Dragon Slayer's face was stern. Ever since he came to this world, he had never met anyone who dared to provoke him like this. He was going to give the other party a good beating and let him know the consequences of offending him. He took the opportunity to attack with a backhand move. Light bloomed in his hand and hit the black hole. Boom! There was a loud sound that made people's hearts tremble. The black hole vibrated violently. Tang Zheng had no choice but to appear from the Somersault Cloud, and the Dragon Slayer quickly turned around. Their eyes met, and his pupils shrank. Naturally, he recognized this enemy that he had fought before. He snorted coldly in his heart and made up his mind not to give the other party a third chance. Tang Zheng also saw the Dragon Slayer's expression, and his heart trembled. It seemed that the Dragon Slayer was going to use his trump card. The Dragon Slayer had indeed used one of his trump cards. Its power was peerless. He was confident that victory was in his hands. Be careful! The Golden Dragon had already appeared in the clouds. The shrunken dragon's body was coiled up, and its two huge dragon eyes stared worriedly at Tang Zheng. It couldn't help but cry out, "Humph, I didn't expect you two to be together. You actually managed to get away with it in front of me," the Dragon Slayer said with annoyance. At the same time, power burst forth from his palm. The light in his palm became even more blazing, like a red sun. The black hole shook violently as if it would collapse at any time. Tang Zheng's heart tightened. He was shocked by the Dragon Slayer's counterattack, but he wasn't afraid. Retreating would only lead to death. Not only him, but even the Golden Dragon wouldn't be able to escape. Since enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road, and the old enemy had reunited, then he would let go of everything and release his strongest power. Tang Zheng activated the sky-devouring technique. The black light expanded, and the black hole immediately stabilized. A vast amount of energy was sucked into the black hole, and this energy gathered in the heaven realm. Absorption. This was the successful counterattack that Tang Zheng had used all his strength. Moreover, it was very effective. The Dragon Slayer's mind was sharp, and his perception was top-notch. He immediately realized that his power was being sucked into the black hole. How could he not understand what was going on? He stared at Tang Zheng with burning eyes and roared, "You still want to absorb my power? Dream on." As soon as he finished speaking, the Dragon Slayer's palm shone brightly. Its power far exceeded that of the others. Most importantly, the majestic energy rushed toward the black hole. Boom! The black hole shook violently again, and the frequency of the shaking became higher and higher. It seemed that it would disappear at any time. "I just got home today, and I'll be back to normal tomorrow." To read the latest novel, please visit the website. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.